evening, everyone. My name is City Councilor Large Michael Flaherty, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, joined here by my colleague, City Councilor Kendra Lara, Chair of the Housing Committee. We are here today to discuss Docket 1141. It is an order for a hearing to discuss public safety and quality of life issues for our residents in public housing, and that matter was sponsored by my colleague, City Councilor Large Erin Murphy, and myself. And we've been joined today by several folks. I see that Chief Lenita Cullinane is here from the Boston Police Department, Chief of Bureau of Field Services, and also needing no introduction to this body is my and our former colleague, Kenzie Bach, who is the new administrator for the Boston Housing Authority, and someone that spends a significant amount of time here in multiple roles in public safety and in housing, is Chief Shemaine Benford, Office of Emergency Management. And I know that Administrator Bach has brought her staff from various divisions and department of the BHA, so we appreciate you and your attention to detail on this very important matter, as well as the collaboration and spirit of cooperation that currently exists between the BHA and the Boston Police Department, and obviously they're hoping to continue to foster that with the Boston City Council. So with that, I want to turn it over to the housing co-sponsor, the chair. This is being chaired by, for the folks at home, this is being chaired by two committees, public safety and housing. Before I forget, I want to let folks know that this hearing is being recorded and is being live streamed at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv. It's also on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and FiOS 964. To provide written testimony, members of the public can also email the committee at ccc.go@boston.gov or ccc.housing@cityofboston.gov. Members of the public wishing to provide testimony in person may do so by signing up on the sheet to my left as you come in the door. If members of the public would like to provide public testimony remotely and have not signed up yet to do so, please email Christine O'Donnell at CHRISTINE, Christine.O'Donnell, ODONNELL, at boston.gov to request the link. I'd like to stress that we need information for people who are providing public testimony via video conferencing, especially if you're dialing in with a phone number or if you have an unrecognizable username. So please make sure that your name appears on the Zoom. And as referenced, we are also joined by colleagues in order of their arrival, and that is City Councilor Frank Baker, City Councilor Liz Braden, City Councilor Ruthie Louisiane, and City Council President Ed Flynn. And with that, turn it over to my co-chair for a brief comment, and then we're going to go right to the lead sponsor, and then we're going to get right into a Q&A with our guests that are here today. Chair recognizes City Councilor Kendra Lara.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you to all the members of the administration for being here with us today, and thank you to the original sponsors for bringing this matter to the Boston City Council. I think at the center of this conversation for me, as the chair of the Housing Committee, is that no matter your income, that you deserve to live with dignity, especially in our public housing developments here in the city. And so when we're looking at safety and we're looking at quality of life for our poorest constituents and our most vulnerable communities, we want to make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's here as a city council and keeping track of how we're making sure that we are meeting the standard for those people. Last year and in this past year, as the chair of the Housing Committee, I have been hosting coffee hours at all of our public housing developments to do just that. I think that oftentimes we forget about folks that live in public housing and don't go directly to them to hear about the experience that they're having, not only with our city agencies, but inside of their homes and how they are being treated. And this, we've had meetings with Administrator Bach, I almost called you Councilor Bach, Administrator Bach's predecessor, Kate Bennett, to talk about what we found and what we were hearing from residents. And so my hope is that we can have a broader conversation about what we've been seeing in public housing for the last year with you all here. So I'm very grateful for the sponsors, and I see the floor. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor Lara. Chair recognizes lead sponsor, City Councilor Erin Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you to the administration for being here. I did just want to start by saying I saw you both Sunday evening, And I just want to take a moment to just pray for the victims of the mass shooting we had, which was at a BHA housing, and pray for that young girl who's fighting for her life. So, and like I said to you when we started, this conversation, we can fix these things, right? This is fixable. We need to work together, and there are bigger issues in this city that obviously need to also take our attention. But to me, the reason why I filed this hearing is I'm an at-large city councilor around the city and all of the neighborhoods. We show up to Unity Day and cookouts, which are fun, but many of the calls that come into my office and I hear from residents in public housing are real quality of life issues. And after doing a little research on it, making sure that we were calling in the right administration and the right people who can help move this forward. The BHA is the agency that's responsible under the Massachusetts law for providing for families unable to afford housing without public subsidies. And to carry out these responsibilities, the BHA develops and manages housing projects and leases. And also the BHA Administration and Operations Department is responsible for the day-to-day management and maintenance of all BHA housing, including living unit inspections, annual HUD inspections, resident relations, lease information, and more. And those are the nuts and bolts, the questions that I get and our office gets and other counselors about, if it's a leaky pipe, if it's an unlocked door, if it's trash left outside, or even things that are more important and more drastic. But I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to working together to make sure that we are uplifting the lives of everyone in the city, but definitely those whose voice may not always be heard. So thank you for coming and taking this seriously.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. We'll also be joined by my colleague, City Councilor at Large, Julia Mejia. And I'll defer it to the panel for opening comments from BHA. We'll start Chief in Chief with the Administrator Bach. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Chair Flaherty and Chair Lara and Council President Flynn, Councilor Baker, Councilor Braden, Councilor Murphy as the lead sponsor, Councilor Mejia, and Councilor Louis Jen. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the new administrator of the Boston Housing Authority and a former Boston City Councilor for District 8. So this is my first time back in the chamber since this change in role. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today about how the BHA operates and maintains our units, our partnership with our BHA residents, and the important work we do alongside our city colleagues, including the police and many other departments to serve those residents. Folks have heard me say this, but in my opinion, the Boston Housing Authority is the most important public institution in this city, and it stands for the fact that everyone deserves to be able to live in Boston regardless of their walk or stage of life. We all know that the original backdrop for this hearing stems from a tragedy that took place at Mary Ellen McCormick on June 18th, 2023. Since federal confidentiality regulations restrict us at BHA from sharing private information about our residents, for the purposes of this hearing, I will limit my testimony regarding any specific unit and household, and instead devote the remaining time to discussing our policies, procedures, and the work we do to ensure that our residents are safe and healthy, as the councilors alluded to. My colleague, BHA Police Chief Shumaine Benford, will also be sharing details about the work of the BHA Public Safety Department and the Boston Housing Authority Police. Councilor Murphy made reference to this, but unfortunately our residents experienced another tragedy on Sunday night at our Franklin Field site, where several members of our community, including children, were seriously injured by gunfire. Our resident families, they're our primary concern at BHA with all the work we do every day, so an event like this is gut-wrenching for our staff. And I know that we're all holding the entire Franklin Field community in our hearts during this incredibly difficult week. I was there on Sunday night for several hours, as was Chief Benson, as was Superintendent Cullinane. And so our team has actually been coordinating extremely closely with BPD over the past 2 days. This incident is still under active investigation, so I won't be able to answer many specific questions about it either, but we are working in close partnership with Boston Police, our residents, BHA staff, and the city's trauma team to do as much as we can to support the affected families and our whole Franklin Field community at this time. And I want to say right now to councilors that depending on how long we run, there may be a point where some of my staff exit, and it's because of a Franklin Field related meeting that we have later in the afternoon. So just if that happens, know that that's why. I would now like to offer some comments in regard to unit conditions at BHA, which are one of the main topics of this hearing order. BHA owns and operates nearly 10,000 units of public housing and project-based voucher housing in Boston. We also administer nearly 18,000 vouchers throughout the greater Boston area. and we serve an extremely vulnerable low-income population of diverse backgrounds, many of whom are seniors, people with disabilities, and children. Because of the overwhelming demand and our own long-standing priorities for housing placement, nearly all of the people we house these days are homeless or housing insecure. And one of our most important priorities is ensuring that we're not only housing as many people as possible, but providing them with safe, healthy housing that improves their quality of life. And I'm really glad to hear councilors highlighting that because, we think it's really important to get people a home, but it's important to get people a decent home and to keep it so. And we've really made tremendous progress in recent years towards improving both our inspections process, which kind of proactively identifies maintenance needs, and also our work order process, where we respond to calls from residents and address issues that they identify in their units. And I want to emphasize the incredible dedication of our hardworking BHA operations staff on this front, day in and day out. I'm going to now address a few of the ways that we're getting better at this. But I just want to stress that, the basic situation of the BHA is trying to maintain a vital asset in a context of capital disinvestment. But at the same time, we just want to give our residents the best quality of service we can. So that's like a lot of what a lot of the folks here spend our days doing, is trying to figure out how do we redesign our systems to do it better. One of our most important requirements is the annual living unit inspection, where we inspect every unit to check conditions and provide any needed repairs. So that's every year, no matter what, in addition to inspections that might happen because of a call from a neighbor or resident. Unfortunately, as with many organizations, there were some necessary disruptions to our process due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused annual inspections to temporarily pause. So those inspections started to resume in 2022 and 2023 across the portfolio, including at Mary Ellen McCormick. And I say that just to note that because of that gap in inspections, we are playing catch up on some unit conditions. It was really important, obviously, with COVID to limit the spread, and people didn't feel safe having folks in their units for anything but a true emergency. But we are, still sometimes right now finding conditions that we say, oh my gosh, if it hadn't been for that, we would have known about this already. And until recently, these living unit inspections were handled by on-site management staff. I wanted to flag for the council that in April, actually, my predecessor, Kate Bennett, she began to transition the BHA to a new process whereby the public housing unit inspections are now being conducted by our leased housing department's inspections team. So that's a big shift, because whereas before the management was doing it themselves on site, managers have a host of different obligations, lots of things to stay on top of. Now the inspections team is actually a dedicated team of 13 inspectors who average over 10 years of experience and conduct 30,000 unit inspections per year. So they're just real pros at this. And these inspections are conducted in accordance with the Mass State Sanitary Code and HUD's housing quality standards. They're all certified via an outside vendor in housing quality standards, and they participate in a vigorous 4 to 6 month training program that actually involves 2 months at least of shadowing. And so, as I said, Kate started that transition in April. We really locked into it in July. And what that means is just a third party set of eyes. Even though it's still inside BHA, it's this separate leased housing inspections team that's coming in. And they also have a lot of additional certifications and training and things like lead hazard control, integrated pest management, fire codes. They're a team that already, because they've been managing the voucher inspection side, liaises closely with the Public Health Commission, with ISD, with the fire department. And then the additional thing that we've layered on is a sort of more detailed quality control inspections layer, where with 10% of our inspections now, we're selecting those at random to sort of QC them, both for how was the basic inspection, and also however long has happened since that inspection, have the work orders that came in from that inspection actually been addressed. And then in addition to inspections at BHA, we're working to completely overhaul our customer service process, both for work orders in public housing and for clients more broadly. I think there are lots of respects in which our old systems, like many institutions, were not sort of digital, and now we're trying to shift that. So I think of it as sort of a parallel to the 311 revolution that came to the city. We're pushing through now. So over the past 2 years, BHA has implemented technology to centralize resources dedicated to customer service response and recording. We've implemented something called Zendesk, which is a software that allows clients to submit tickets via phone, online, or live agent chat. And we now have this customer service center, so if you call the BHA line and you press 0, they take calls on a host of issues across the BHA and tracks them in this new software. So since then, we've solved nearly 25,000 customer issues with that new software, over 80% of them on time and with 80% satisfaction, so we're getting better all the time. but we're constantly like working to improve this system. And I just also wanted to say, again, for those who don't know, might be watching at home, I only started this role on August 7th, so that's why I want to continue to give credit to my predecessor, Kate Bennett. She also instituted a new quality control team to work with our sites to basically catch up on a work order backlog that had developed during the pandemic. The challenge is just we had a lot of work orders that weren't getting done because of limitations on getting into units, the supply chain issues, and so that had created a backlog, and we don't want our residents to feel demoralized by that, and we don't want our staff to. So we've had a team that's been led by a quality control team, led by our director of inspections, that so far has helped a bunch of our sites. They're sort of going site by site and helping them improve their work order system. One of the big early ones was Mildred Haley in Councilor Lara's district. Now they're at Mary Ellen McCormick full-time. And that team has really helped the sites that it's been to so far reduce their work order loads by 55%, and by 3/4 for work orders over 60 days. So it's a really intensive kind of wraparound help for our sites, and it's been hugely effective. We haven't gotten to every site yet, so it's very in process. But we are also in the midst of a full overhaul of our work order process, as we're tending to move to a fully digital system on that side. And we want to make it so that folks can check in on their work order, because one of the things that we've also heard in this process is that, sometimes the reason a work order hasn't happened is something that the BHA can't control, like we are waiting on a part, or we need to bundle a whole bunch of these together for some reason. But we also recognize that we need to be able to communicate back better to our residents, like what's the timeline, what's their expectation, because people, if they just don't know when it's going to happen, that's tough. And so we've also moved Zendesk recently into this space as well to help tenants track existing work orders. In the last year, BHA staff completed 66,516 work orders in the public housing program. And just to give you a sense of that surge I was talking about, at Mary Ellen McCormick specifically, we completed 1,113 work orders in just the last month. As you all know, this work to maintain and raise the living standards is being undertaken at the same time as we work to address long-term capital needs across our public housing communities. So I know councilors are aware, for example, we have a wholesale redevelopment plan at Mary Ellen McCormick that is under BPDA review right now. And at places like Franklin Field and Mildred Haley, we are investing in significant green retrofits that will improve energy systems and building envelopes, along with kitchens and other interior features. We're excited about that. And so, of course, we have to be walking and chewing gum, doing both and, right? Investing in our current capital program, but also doing these transformations. I do want to say a word about the fact that in those transformations and really all this work, the BHA really works alongside our residents. We go to tremendous effort to retain good lines of communication with our residents and to ensure that there's a reservoir of trust. There are actually 22 elected tenant organizations at BHA which work with us, and we're always trying to get our sites that don't have an LTO, a local tenant organization, to organize one. We've got our resident advisory board and our monitoring committee, who all do important work as public housing residents and voucher participants to represent their neighborhoods and help us understand their priorities. BHA residents have the same rights and deserve the same respect as any other resident of the city of Boston. When we do talk about unit conditions and stuff, I do want to stress that we are required to provide a 48-hour notice to enter apartments outside of an emergency situation, or unless waived by a particular resident. We're mindful that while we provide residents with needed affordable housing, we also need to treat residents with dignity and respect and not overly intrude upon their lives without factual cause. As with any other person who rents an apartment, BHA residents have the right to have visitors and to enjoy their living environment within the confines of their lease without undue intrusion or interference. And just because this was referenced in the hearing order, I do want to say, though, that if evidence of subletting is present, BHA does proceed with eviction action, and that's because our units need to be available to people on our wait list. So if we find that somebody is using a unit that not for themselves, that's obviously an immediate flag for us. When BHA encounters problematic housekeeping conditions in a unit, we discuss the situation with the resident and give the resident an opportunity to address the issue. BHA staff, and especially this inspector team I was talking about, are trained to identify hoarding at different levels of severity. Often, conversation with the resident is sufficient to address the concern after follow-up inspections are conducted. In cases where the concern is not addressed, BHA brings in additional assistance through social service providers for the resident to help them address the issue. In extreme cases, BHA may take a case to court, in part because of the services that can bring. So I do just want to flag, we would be very grateful to counselors for any support in making more services available for our tenants in these types of cases, particularly in regard to hoarding and housekeeping issues. There's actually a bit more available for seniors right now than there are for non-seniors. And, you know, this is very often connected to mental health concerns, and the BHA does everything we can to keep residents and preserve their tenancies prior to resorting to court action. So that is a space where we would love more support. And I do want to be clear that during regular inspections and unit repairs at the Mary Ellen McCormick unit that recently generated press attention, BHA staff observed no prior evidence of subletting or endangerment of anyone. But that brings me to public safety, and I'll just say one or two more words on that and then just quickly pass it over to my chief. I want to speak broadly about the safety at BHA. I think most counselors are aware that the BHA's public safety department has been severely underfunded since 2001, when the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development eliminated the public housing drug elimination program. That was the title for the program that funded both public safety and youth programming at the BHA. So unfortunately, those things were slashed. And since then, so BHA's police department attrited down very significantly. And then has started to rebuild. So the BHA has a small public safety and police department consisting of 9 full-time and part-time functional sworn members that provide quality of life and liaison services to supplement the work of the Boston Police Department. Our developments are part of city neighborhoods, and so the Boston Police Department, the Boston Fire Department, and Boston EMS are the primary responders in cases of emergency and for all criminal investigations like what we had on Sunday night. The BHA's Public Safety Department, though, was recently certified by the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission, MPAC, on June 21st, 2023. I really want to underscore what a big deal that is. Unlike many small non-municipal departments across the Commonwealth, BHA was able to achieve this new standard in the wake of recent police reform legislation. So I think folks on the council are familiar with the fact that many, services like our municipal police here, like the park rangers, other groups, lost their police status. It's really thanks to the work of the man sitting to my left that we have gotten recertified as a department, and that's really important to providing that auxiliary support service. This professional designation is critical in highlighting the department's commitment to equitable enforcement and best practices in policing. I also want to thank the council. With Mayor Wu and the council's generous support, we currently have 6 new BHA police recruits in training at the police academy, which will increase our numbers by more than 50%. We've been hard at work implementing a new model for policing at the BHA, which will assign a core team of BHA police for each BPD district area, but that structure will only become fully realized with the arrival of the additional officers on the force in the new year. Each team will work closely with the respective BPD district, BHA residents, and other stakeholders on coordinated actions to address issues of crime and quality of life concerns. And I will just say that one of the things we really value, the Boston Police Department brings just enormous professionalism, and again, we're going to hear from the superintendent in a moment. What we see ourselves as bringing at BHA is really the relationships with our residents, and I think we see all the time that sometimes our residents feel like they can come to us with a concern that they're nervous about going through other channels, and that's a place where we really want to embrace our role and recognize that we can really help be that bridge. And within this model of working with BPD, we work to address illegal activity at BHA and especially behaviors that threaten the health and safety of our residents. Serious lease violations are addressed, and if a situation arises where staff are concerned for any member of the household safety, including children, BHA staff notify BPD and BHA police. In addition, we're working closely with the Boston Police Department and have made significant progress to update all BHA addresses in BPD's CAD system so that BHA staff receive more timely notifications related to incidents that occur on BHA property. As I mentioned earlier, for example, we have been intimately involved since the first hour in response to Sunday night's tragedy at Franklin Field. But, and this is the last thing I want to say, we are mindful that wraparound services are also needed to address many of the social challenges that we face in our communities, with arrest often the last and least desirable option. Concerns including but not limited to substance abuse disorder, food insecurity, and mental health difficulties impact our residents' quality of life and can be addressed in a more responsive and equitable way through a service delivery model. We're also always eager for more investment in positive opportunities at all our sites. So to that end, another thanks, we're very grateful for the council support in the most recent city budget for major new youth programming and social work support at Franklin Field specifically to be implemented later this year. So it's sort of heartbreaking for us that we have this program that's like starting to get built out but doesn't exist yet. But the council did put their $700,000 in the budget for a real best-in-class, evidence-based youth supportive program with a social worker, and we have fantastic work done by Joe Robinson on that site right now at Franklin Field, but we're really going to be able to soup that up with this funding. And so the Boston Housing Authority's Public Safety Department has an important supporting role in working with the Boston Police Department to ensure public safety in all our communities. And I promise they won't go on as long as I did. I'm happy to have my colleague Chief Benford and Superintendent Cullinane here, and I just want to have the Chief speak just briefly in a little more detail.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. I want to thank the committees for your work, as well as this body, the council as a whole, the mayor, the administrator, and my colleagues for the tremendous support and investment in BHAPD, as well as the space to be able to have this conversation. Councilor, I join you, and I'm sure an entire city, in recognizing the victims of Sunday's violence, but also recognizing the harm done through deviance for all those that are victims of violence across the city. With regards to BHA Police, and I'm going to try and narrow down my comments to be respectful of time, we recognize, as the administrator has shared, that BPD is the primary law enforcement agency for the city. And as the administrator shared, over the past 20 years, the department, BHA Police, was prepared to be dissolved through attrition. And through the work of Kate Bennett, the prior administrator, she started a conversation in 2020 around salvaging the department to really help address the internalized needs of the BHA community, but to also serve as the BHA's representative to the external law enforcement community. When we started this work in 2021 in earnest, we encountered a department that had low morale. There was no investment in training and or resources. They had lost their station, was relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment to run the public safety division, which includes both the police and the senior safety division side of the house. Outdated thinking, distrust of the system, and distrust of each other, quite frankly. Staffing at the time consisted of 1 police officer and 5 police sergeants, with 1 retiring within 6 months, and we had 3 dispatchers. Last piece about that is there was an express directive not to leave 1 development. That was the Mildred Haley development. So the overwhelming majority of those resources was confined to the Mildred Haley development for several years, which means we had an entire city that had no public safety footprint with regards to thinking and how to support those other communities. In 2021, we embarked upon a 3-year stabilization and growth plan that's centered on 21st century policing. Those principles include equity, partnership, problem solving, and prevention. No one less critical piece of that plan is engaging the community. Been very clear in our comments while engaging and going around and speaking with the resident leaders, it is critical to have community involvement in this process. As a public housing kid that grew up in public housing in Roxbury, and those of us that grew up in urban settings, we know our neighborhoods best. We know where the cut in the fence is. We know how to get from one side of the community to the other. So engaging and having the community as a vibrant stakeholder is extremely important and critical. And because of that, we approach this as a whole of community approach. We are, and we represent the public safety side of it, but we also recognize that certain pieces of it don't require a public safety-led response. It requires a social response. Some of it may require colleagues' responses that represent other sides of the house in the BHA. So we do approach this from a whole of community approach in how we're trying to address policing moving forward. The police reform law was signed by the governor in late 2020. The material impacts of that law went into effect July 1 of 2021. Which left us approximately 6 months. And I want to frame it up on my earlier comments around no training, no forward thinking, no visionary thinking. We had 6 months to prepare the department, as well as ensure that the officers had the training and was ready to be certified on July 1. I'm proud and happy to say that with a host of different partners, and most importantly, the officers that did the work, that within that 6 months, we met the standard, and on July 1, the BHA Police Department has and is recognized by the Municipal Police Training Committee, as well as the Post Commission. The administrator mentioned the new model and the new philosophy that we're moving towards. With the elimination of the drug elimination grant in the early 2000s, it took the floor out from housing authorities across the country, and Boston was no different. So as we looked at this work moving forward, we had to develop models that was going to allow us to be effective with reduced resources. So we looked at how do we go about doing this work. So we adopted in the process, as the administrator said, with the new officers coming on, we will be able to fully implement the neighborhood engagement team model. And what that's going to do is it's really revolutionary for where we are as a department. It's going to take us from a model where we have 5 area-wide teams to cover the entire geographical footprint of the city to 11 district-based teams, which is going to give us a more granular opportunity to be successful at this model. As I mentioned, it embraces 21st century philosophies. We want to focus on our reduced resources. We want to focus on problem solving. And there are several examples that we can point to that are successes that are in the room. I spoke with one of your colleagues just before starting around some issues that we had addressed in another section of the city that's been successful. We can point to, as unfortunate as Sunday is, we can point to the proactive work that we've done at the Franklin Field development during the Caribbean Carnival and working with Captain Flynn, Superintendent Culline's Bureau, and helping to secure that Westview Street corridor. We can point to the Fairmount development where we worked with neighborhood groups that surround the development that were very clear in that we want to ensure that the residents of public housing are included in the conversation. We don't want them excommunicated. It was encouraging to hear that they don't want to call 911. They want to work with us on alternatives. We can point to the Gallivan development which just 2 years ago, I don't know how it slipped by myself and the superintendent over the years on the street at Mattapan, but 1,500 people descended on a development of 200 plus units on the 4th of July. It created enormous challenges for the police department in having to divert all resources up to that development. We worked with that community, we worked with the captain, with the police department to come up with a model that allows us to be proactive, that recognizes the community and want to celebrate our nation's birthday, but do it in a balanced way. And we are so happy and very fortunate to report that there were no instances, and a credit to the police department, the year that they had Roman candles turned on them and had a hostile crowd. There were no instances then, and certainly the last couple of years we've seen tremendous turnover and being able to turn the development, if you would, back over to the community within reason, given that it is a holiday, by 10:30 and 8:30 respectively over the last several years. When we talk about 21st century policing, we want to talk about alternatives, and that's what this engagement team model is. It really provides us with alternatives to policing. That's not to suggest that those models that give us alternative options is designed to subvert the arrest process. Quite frankly, if someone has to be arrested, that's what that is there for. But we also recognize that we know that dysfunction, we know that substance abuse disorders are often drivers of individuals involving themselves in criminal behavior. We know that individuals that are sleeping in our developments are suffering from homelessness and being unsheltered. So we worked with and had open conversation with the Pine Street Inn, where they made an outreach worker available on call if we bumped into individuals that we were removing from the development. Quite frankly, if we locked everyone up that was trespassing, it would overwhelm the system. So having those alternatives really does provide us with a range of services and a range of different options in responding. I want to quickly just jump over to where we are as a department and where we're moving. We do have 5 police officers today. As we shared, we have 3 full-time supervisors and 1 part-time supervisor. We have 6 recruits that are in the academy, and again, want to thank you for your support in adopting a budget that allowed for that greater flexibility. We also have 5 dispatchers that's critical for being able to provide communication services after hours. We have an accreditation manager that works part-time that is helping us with maintaining our certification and moving towards accreditation. And I want to underscore the administrator's comments around that certification. This is really a nod not to anything that I did directly, but really a team approach that included multiple departments around adopting policies, adopting rules and regulations that show that we are a department that is committed to the 21st century, transparency, accountability, response to the community, working in partnership with the community, and that is a big deal that we were able to accomplish that in 18 months. The average time frame is about 3 years. I will close by just mentioning that we are a department that operates 16 hours a day. We're not 24 hours a day. We don't have that capacity with the resources. And quite frankly, if you talk to anyone, excuse me, that understands police deployment and resources, they would argue that based on what we have, the size of the community that we have, a footprint that spans a major metropolitan city, that we're barely operational. That's a direct nod to the officers that are doing the work. They understood that there were going to be some difficult days while we really used them to help provide proof of concept and really serve as the foundation for advocating for and, quite frankly, deserving more resources so that we're in service at a greater level to the community. So we're extremely proud of that. We have a new communication space that integrates cameras into that space. We are going to be moving towards body-worn cameras, which again promote and speak to transparency. We know we have a new station with the fortunate support of the outgoing administrator and the new administrator coming in the door that's going to give symbolic space to our officers so they have the resources to do the work and have a basis to feel proud and stand on. We also are committed to our senior safety division, which is our security officers that provide services at some of our elderly buildings. We are very much committed to professionalizing our services and supporting them in the space that they work in. We settled collective bargaining agreements as an authority as a whole, and we rebuilt relationships with our labor partners by focusing on pragmatic deference to supporting staff and transparency. I want to close my comments by recognizing our colleagues from the police department. We could not be successful without the police department. We rely on the BPD as a subordinate agency in a multitude of different ways, and we try and return that by being an equal partner in how we can be proactive with reducing the imprint on their resources within public housing. And I want to just mention that they worked with us on restoring patrols. We're having open and candid conversations about Mary Ellen McCormick and other departments. They support us with dispatching and telecommunications, licensing, coordinated patrols, training to include annual training that's required by the new postal law. The police department supports us, met us in the middle, understood what our needs were, most importantly, understood where we were looking to go as a department in service to our communities. We also support them with investigations and support them with special events. It's extremely important as we go through these motions to make sure that we recognize those individuals that support us and that are equal partners. That includes you, and I thank you for the opportunity to share it. It includes our mayor, our police department, our administrator, the range of colleagues that join us here today, and most importantly, our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Thank you so much, committee and council, for having me here today. Just want to reiterate how unfortunate the events that took place on Sunday were. We're just hoping, as everyone is, for a speedy recovery of all those involved. Just want to emphasize the police commissioner's commitment to working together with everyone to make sure that we are addressing any situations or incidents that impact the city or the residents as a whole. So I know that we are the primary law enforcement agency in Boston that responds to incidents, and we do a good job of collaborating with the Boston Housing Authority Police as it relates to responding to those events or situations. We're generally the initial touch point when it comes to those type of situations when we're responding to incidents, but we also deal with a number of other situations, and because we are often the initial touch point, it highlights situations, issues, challenges that residents might be experiencing, and then it's important for us to then assist residents in accessing resources. And so I think that in terms of the crime aspect, we are responding in a lot of time and on a lot of incidents as it relates to crimes, but we also are addressing a lot of the quality of life issues that the residents of BHA are dealing with. So I think that those things are important. Chief Benford mentioned that we collaborate quite regularly. He's working with a number of the bureaus within the Boston Police Department to improve some of the operations of the Boston Housing Authority Police, and also to make those collaborations more effective and useful as it relates to us carrying out our operations and our duties. So I think, like I said, I think the emphasis is on the fact that we are the primary law enforcement agency, but we also serve as a liaison or a conduit to other services, and that collaboration, that communication is so important as it relates to the responses of the Boston Police Department. The district captains are very involved in the process. The community service officers, they're out in the community, not only as it relates to crime, but just making those connections with residents in the city, in the BHA housing developments, and making sure that they have quality access to resources, and they're able to have that information shared with the agencies that are able to kind of resolve any type of situations or challenges that they're experiencing.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you all for a very thorough presentation. We've also been joined by my colleague, the City Councilor Gabriella Coletta from District 1. I get right into questions from the lead sponsor. Chair recognizes the City Councilor at large, Chairman Murphy.
Thank you. So thank you for your thorough opening. You didn't let us down, Bach, but I'm going to actually hold my questions to the end. I know that all my colleagues, I'm happy to see that we have great attendance here, and I would, if that's fine with you, Chair, to get right into questions from my colleagues, and I can close it out.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you to the administrator. Obviously, I appreciate all the detail on the unit inspections. Took a lot of my questions away from me, but how often are unit inspections? Are they mandated annually, biannually? And what if a resident is not home and or you have a hoarding situation or nothing, born in public housing. Public housing was there when my grandfather died suddenly, and my grandmother had to raise 2 children on her own, and it was the Old Harbor Village and the neighbors that rallied behind my grandmother and arguably raised my mother and my uncle, but nothing more offensive to someone that was born in public housing to have subletting going on in public housing. You get folks having maybe a private business running out of their unit. There could be some drug and some gang activity happening. So when you're doing unit inspections, however often they are, and you can't gain access to that unit, but you're getting some calls as to some activity that might be happening, what's the recourse particularly for the abutters?
Yeah, thanks so much, Councilor Flaherty, and obviously we're particularly proud of all of our BHA alumni, so glad to count you as one of them. And I'll ask actually if Josh and Raul can just come up just in case you might be able to provide a little more detail than me, but basically our living unit inspections are something that the BHA is doing every year, no matter what, for all units. As I said, they were paused during COVID, but that was an absolute exceptional situation. In addition, HUD does inspections as well. So the idea is that they're also performing a quality control function. And then, as I mentioned, we're now instituting this thing where we do 10% of ours, we do a quality control. I think I'll actually have these folks talk a little bit about the mechanisms for making sure that we get into units, but we do, if the tenant's not there to open it, et cetera, we will eventually get into every unit. So.
Very good. And thank you, Administrator. And while I see Josh is here, after the incident, Council President Flynn led a walkthrough. Josh and his team did phenomenal work getting to the root of a lot of the complaints that were taking place. As I sort of smirked when Shu talked about the cut in the fence, because I grew up in that development, and I know exactly where the cut in the fence was. And a lot of the folks at Mass and Cass know that cut in the fence. And so the residents complaining about the discarded needles and the cracked pipes and the bottles and what have you back there in close proximity to where children play, and neighbors have been complaining about it. To Josh's credit and his team, they got right on it and put a complete spit shine, as well as addressing doors without locks, broken windows, etc. That made a huge difference in the residents and butters' quality of life. So to Josh and his team, appreciate that. And Administrator, before we go to Josh,
sure.
Is it mandated annual inspections? Are they biannual inspections? Are they quarterly inspections? What's the rule of thumb? No inspections?
No, so they're annual, and just to be clear, if no one's there when we come, then we track them and reschedule a visit, and eventually if nobody's there, like, we'll just get in. Obviously, we have the master keys. But as I mentioned in my comments, we are a landlord and we do abide by the law related to landlords giving their tenants notice, right? So that's why we have the 48-hour notice, except in emergency, et cetera. So there's various avenues that will allow us, if somebody is recalcitrant, like, to get into a unit. But at the same time, like, we're always starting from the position of these are tenants with legal rights, and we don't want them to feel, we want them to be able to enjoy their unit within the privacy that they're entitled to. Do you guys want to add anything about?
Yeah, so for every resident, first of all, my name is Raul Leon, Boston Housing Authority. For every resident, they will receive at a minimum of 48-hour notice that BHA will come to their units. That way they can prepare in advance for their unit inspection. If they're not home, the notice will say you don't have to be home. BHA can enter based on the lease, and that's provided on the notice as well. And if we have the key and the resident's not home, BHA may proceed in the unit, complete the inspection, and exit. If the resident's home, better, we can speak with the resident, get more information about any other issues they may have or concerns while we're there, and also complete the annual inspection. Now, whereby we have situations where we go to access a unit and the resident has changed a lock, we can't gain entry at that point. We will provide them a follow-up notice to say on this day we were at your unit, there were no entry access, but you've also violated the lease with a lock change. BHA will be returning on this day, and BHA will either be requesting that you provide BHA with a current key for our office of your lock, or BHA will then be replacing the lock back to a BHA lock at the tenant's expense. In situations where we cannot enter the unit or access the unit, let's say we return and possibly there's a dog in the unit, and obviously it sounds like it's not caged, then we'll have to take other measures, including a private conference with the resident that leads up to and including the eviction process.
Very good. Thank you, Raul. Who tracks the 911 calls for public housing? So the underlying incident, local police captain wasn't necessarily aware, the chief wasn't aware, the administrator wasn't aware. And so I would think that when 911 gets called for any one of our BHA developments, there's some mechanism by which there's some type of communication with the police department and the administrator's office. It could be, and also that would also, continue on to say maybe a court process. You've got some drug dealing, you recovered some firearms from a unit. There's allegations of some prostitution. So 911 gets called, they do make an arrest. Those offenses, frankly, are not conducive to the BHA code of conduct, if you will, and or the tenant's agreement. And then that will obviously start an eviction process. So I guess who from BHA oversees 911, police, and court activity for existing tenants to make sure that they're adhering to the tenant handbook, if you will?
I'll defer to...
Just wait.
Sorry about that. I'll defer to the superintendent with regards to the 911 calls as the PSAP. But Councilor, just so I can make sure I understand your question, are you asking with regards to follow up with residents, or are you asking specifically for the police department?
Sure, the residents want action, right? So say, for example, pick a location, 30 Logan Way, police get called, 911, they make a couple arrests for drug dealing, they seize drug paraphernalia, drug equipment, scales, everything. They recover 3 firearms, right? Great. What happens next, all right, I guess is what the abutters want to know, because they were the ones that were seeing this activity
Of course.
all hours of the night. They want to make sure that from that 911 call, the arrest, the court hearing, that there's an eviction process actively underway to remove that individual or individuals from particularly from a family development or a senior development, whereby they're not a law-abiding, they're not honoring the tenancy, they're wreaking havoc, creating an untenable situation for the folks that live across the hall or 1 floor down or 1 floor up. And so now finally, 911's involved, an arrest is made, everybody is hugging and high-fiving in that building or across the courtyard, only to find out that the individual or individuals, a day or two later, are back in the game.
Sure.
So I want to know, how does BHA and how is that whole how is that working so that that process starts
Absolutely.
in conjunction on parallel tracks with the court process? Because the complaints we get, I get them citywide, is that there are residents that will come forward
Sure.
when they see that type of activity. A lot of folks are afraid to engage and to get involved. But for those that actually have the courage to step forward, to work with law enforcement and to work with the BHA, to bring an end to that type of behavior that is really destroying the community, destroying that building, destroying the floor in the building, uprooting, particularly in the senior developments where there's a younger community coming in, engaged in late parties, all kinds of activity, drug dealing, prostitution. Those folks, those poor tenants have to deal with it. When they do get involved and when police get involved, they need to know that BHA is also a partner, and they're going to start that process to kind of find the fungus among us and make sure that they're not honoring their tenancy, they're not being a good resident, they're not being a good neighbor. They've turned a residential community upside down.
Sure.
So I guess that's, in short, how are we communicating when there's when there's an arrest made, when there's drugs confiscated, when there's been prostitution activity, when someone has been subletting, when there's been chaos at that particular location? Where is the solace for the neighboring resident that, you know what, BHA gets this, that, yeah, they removed that tenant because they weren't being a good neighbor, they weren't being a good tenant, as opposed to allowing it to continue on, which has been the complaints we get citywide, is that
Sure.
there's no action, it's all, all bark, no bite, all sizzle, no steak, right? Okay. So there you got it. So who from BHA? Who is the BHA person that reviews the police reports on Monday for the chaos that took place over the weekend? Who's the person? Is it you, Shu? Did you sit there? Oh, yep, okay, there's an arrest on Logan Way. Yep, we got one on Flaherty Way. We got one over in Gallivan. Who is the person from BHA that is reviewing Boston police reports weekly? And then saying, yep, drugs, guns, prostitution. BHA, we need to take action against this particular individual. We need to trespass this person. We need to start the eviction process. So don't look to the chief. I want to know who on your side of the table is reviewing those police reports.
So there are multiple pieces to your question that impact the different departments. So why I initially deferred to the superintendent was to talk about the 911 call and to talk about the notification tree. Once that notification tree comes over, there is a process by which we notify internal BHA stakeholders to start that parallel track, because as you know, one is criminal, one is civil. So I wanted to provide clarification from the superintendent on the 911 piece and the follow-up investigation piece, because again, that falls to BPD. And as part of that process, we are notified initially of that call for service. Okay?
And if I can just say, and it would be helpful for the superintendent to say a word, that's something I referenced, Counselor, with just the fact that one of the things that we found, and it did come up, out partly in the incident in question, is that our addresses were not necessarily accurately reflected in BPD's list, partly because, there were old things that are no longer BHA things, and there are things that are BHA things that weren't in it, and so making sure that we would reliably get those notifications is something that the two people to my left have been working intensely with both teams on. In terms of the question that you're asking, though, I just want to say that it's Shu's whole team, because the way that it works to get the kind of satisfaction that you're talking about is that if there is something that happened, and maybe it happened overnight with BPD, maybe it was our own folks. I mean, we deal quite a lot actually with folks who don't live in the development trespassing, and one of a major role that BHA officers play is to no trespass those folks out. His whole team will pass it on to the relevant manager, because the process of court action actually comes from the management office, right? Because it's a legal process. So they need the documentation from the public safety team. But then it comes to the manager's office so that they can put together a dossier so that ultimately they can serve the resident. And then our legal department is, of course, chasing the court aspect. But I would say actually one of the ways in which Shu's team is particularly helpful is that in the past there's been a dynamic where sometimes what you were alluding to, like everyone's seeing the activity, but it's not getting documented in a way that a court of law is going to buy. And so because of that, that's where you get that dissatisfaction, where the BHA is trying to take action, but then not succeeding in court. And obviously we talked a lot about the fact that, our goal at the BHA is to preserve tenancies, right? Absolutely. At the same time, we want to provide safe housing for folks. And if there is somebody in the housing who is making it unsafe for all of their neighbors, then that's a top priority. And I would say that also the reality is that some of this activity was harder for the BHA to pursue during the COVID pandemic with the moratorium. And so, there is also now a shift back to being able to do some more of that. And it's really that kind of extreme for cause eviction process. That's really the only, the BHA, like I said, we're interested in preserving tenancies, but those are the cases that rise to that level for us.
And if I was the administrator or the chief, anytime there was an incident on BHA property, right? Anytime 911 gets called, ambulance, fire, police respond, whether there's an arrest or not, or the fact that there was an incident on my property as a landlord, you want to know, right? Chief should be getting a text or a page or an email, or the administrator. So you should never be caught off guard. Hey, did you hear what happened at such and such the other night? Whoa, what are you talking about? First I'm hearing of it. That should never be the case. Not as the chief of public safety and or the administrator. You should be in the know anytime there is an incident of some substance and scale in the development, any development, period.
And I would just add, Council, just more specifically to your question, you asked about that follow-up, right? And I do want to be respectful of capacity, right? We have a big enterprise, 58,000 residents, 60 billion, right? It's a big enterprise, right? And we do rely on, and the police department has been very effective with communicating out that initial notification on major instances. These are part of the conversations that we've had with Superintendent Cullinan's Bureau is how do we ensure that we have an additional layer of communication when an officer gets to the scene and the circumstances change. So the initial notification goes out, but how do we get down to that next level where, based on what the officers encounter, how do we ensure that that level of communication is being shared out? That's one. And then secondly, you asked about who was following up. This is why we're trying to develop capacity with these new investments, with these neighborhood engagement teams. It's going to be the responsibility of that officer in working with the district to review incident reports from the previous evening so that he or she can follow up with the district and the BPD assets to make sure that there is a sustainable and logical level of interaction so that we can be involved in that process.
Very good, thank you. We've also been joined by my colleague, City Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson. Chair recognizes co-chair, City Councilor Kendra Lara.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you all for being here. A couple of things on my end. I think for me, I really appreciate the clarity in terms of process and what's happening at BHA. I want to stay on the thread of safety because I do believe that there is infrastructure that makes way for safety. There is a soft infrastructure and hard infrastructure, particularly in Boston public housing, that creates safe environments. Some of the things that I've heard from people living in public housing are lighting, cameras, the difference between a BHA officer and a BHA security, and their different roles, activations of open spaces inside of BHA, youth programming, and also to Administrator Bach's earlier point about connection with other city services, particularly when it comes to mental health, hoarding, cleaning services, and so on and so forth. The reason why I really want to focus on the infrastructure that creates safe community is because what we're seeing across the city, we're having a constant conversation about youth violence. It's a conversation that, when I was a street worker, was the conversation that we were having. It's the conversation that I was having before that. It's the conversation that we've been having since then. It is not by happenstance that the young people who are being most impacted by violence and are participating the most in violence come from neighborhoods that are less resourced. They come from poor backgrounds, they come from public housing, and so there is one that follows the other. And so I want to talk about the infrastructure investments that create public safety, particularly inside of BHA housing. So in my conversations with the previous administrator, Kate Bennett, we talked about the possibility of doing an audit, a lighting audit, for example, in BHA, right? There are places where this activity follows and where it is allowed to happen because there's a lack of infrastructure. There's not good lighting, people don't go there, people in the neighborhood don't feel safe there, and then folks who are bad actors find the pockets and the places where they can kind of go and do their business. So we were having a conversation about that. I would love to hear more about that. I would like to hear about the camera system. I am very much in line with the ethos of protecting people's privacy and their right to privacy. Even though they live in public housing, that doesn't mean that they should just be grateful for what they're getting. I think that they have a right to privacy. And so with that in mind and within those parameters, right, what kind of camera systems, what kind of surveillance do we have in at least public areas? And I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, so just on those 2 points. So with the lighting survey, I mean, I agree, lighting's one of those. It's like it might seem like a small detail, but it makes a huge difference. And I know that the BHA actually, we did lighting surveys at the sites in your district that we were discussing in response to those meetings with Kate. I wouldn't say that we've done it everywhere. It does get raised to us though as a resident concern, and so we often are hearing from people, oh, this light is out, and also trying to get our staff to make sure that they're like doing that kind of mental check through. So I think it's an area that we can always do more in, because there's of course making sure that the lights that we currently have are like working, but there's also the question of like, where do we need light that we don't have? And that can be more complicated because often, it's like we've put things on the buildings that we have, and if there's a kind of like middle area between two buildings, then the question of, everyone on the council knows that the question of like installing a new light and then whose road is it and like how does it all work is a little complicated, but I think that it's it pays real dividends, so it's something that I would like us to continue to kind of do more on, and I thought that the advocacy from your office was really helpful. On cameras, cameras are actually something that a lot of sites where we have substantial camera networks, it's because they've been strongly advocated for by the local tenant organization. And that's really important to us because we want like camera systems to be like by the residents for the residents, right? They're obviously not going to be operated by the residents, but like we don't want people to feel like the BHA is watching them. We want people to feel like, hey, this is part of how I want to be safe. And so what that tends to mean is that we put the cameras like on the outside of buildings, like facing sort of like shared areas, facing like, public streets and other areas, so that our residents, because they, very often get frustrated if they see behavior happening, like Councilor Flaherty was talking about, and they say, why is no action? And then we're looking at it and we're like, we don't have any substantiation that this is happening, so we can't pursue a lease violation, or how do we get, or BPD says we don't know. So that's been a big push for the cameras. And I would say that it has repeatedly paid major dividends in terms of resolving unsafe situations. And, again, the tricky thing is we don't tend to talk about the ways in which they're crucial when an investigation is ongoing. And then when the investigation's in the rearview mirror, we don't tend to talk about it, period. But I would just say that, in my time at the BHA before, there was a famous awful case of someone getting abducted and brought into a BHA apartment in Charlestown, and that was a situation where the BHA's camera networks was completely central.
And the brick.
And so do you have an audit of the camera systems and how many of them are working or not working? Because the reason why I brought it up is because some of the complaints that we're hearing from residents is, or when I talk to the management is, I'm like, oh, well, there are cameras there. Oh, those don't work. They're not working, right? And so similar to the lighting, has there been some kind of audit about the camera networks that currently exist, and what would it take to get everything back online and functioning for the residents?
So I think that's an area where we have more to do. We have one amazing person who manages the entire camera network for the BHA, and because of resident advocacy, it has grown over time. And I would say that it's fair to say that like the scale of the infrastructure has outstripped the staff capacity for it. So it's actually one of the things that we're talking about internally is how do we better support them, because they're so crucial, and obviously we don't want to have ones that don't function. I would say though that a large number of them do function, like the vast majority, and I would also say that obviously sometimes if some people have the impression that cameras don't operate, it isn't always in the BHA's interest to dispel that impression. So I'm just saying that it's not always, the perception that something's not working isn't always accurate.
So they might be working and people will say that they're not working.
People say they're not working, but like if somebody thinks, oh, and therefore I can do whatever in this area and not, like the point is.
No, I
yeah.
understand. I understand that. But my conversations have been with folks from management, so
Right,
so just
right.
wanted to bring that up in terms of what's happening. So on the same thread of infrastructure, Mildred Haley specifically, right? I think that one of the things that we've tried to do, particularly in public housing, is that for the most part, public housing developments are insular and they're kind of like their own communities. And so we try to create spaces within public housing where people can be in community, whether it be open spaces, spaces with benches, green spaces, areas. And those areas, if they're not, one, properly activated or properly lit, become then the gathering places. At Mildred Haley specifically, there's like an empty plot of land and there's a senior woman who lives in one of the buildings that face Center Street, and she calls and complains often about the 20 young people who are standing outside of her window every single night. So what our idea was, the Office of Food Justice is providing raised beds for people. We were just like, how can we get BHA to collaborate with the Office of Food Housing and activate that area in front of this woman's house and just put the neighborhood garden there, right? If everybody's there at the neighborhood garden, then those are the kind of things, because the reality is that a lot of those young people live there. And so they're just standing around in their neighborhood, but there are ways to create safety in a way that we're activating. And so what work is happening at BHA to activate the public spaces within the, as violence deterrents and as deterrents to this kind of activity? How are we activating the public spaces inside of the BHA developments?
Yes, this is something we're working like a lot on and are really excited about. Actually, Taylor Kane, who's my chief of staff here, she was doing, before becoming chief of staff, was doing sort of a bunch of policy and planning stuff. And one of it was like, how do we get more of these like community gardens everywhere? How do we do more green infrastructure? And kind of evaluating those forgotten spaces. One that I'm really excited about is at Archdale, which is one of our developments in Roslindale. There's a kind of like grassy lot in the back that had really become overgrown, abandoned, quite like, an eyesore, and it also meant that it attracted some negative activity. And this summer, the BHA Youth Council, in partnership with Spoke, formerly Medicine Wheel, an organization I know some folks here know, they went and assessed the space and like envisioned how to make it better and came up with like basically like this whole plan where they created a raised bed. They investigated which birds were using the tree, and they built bird houses of the appropriate bird type and put them up in the tree, and they cleared out the benches and chairs and tables. And something that really made my heart sing was that when I was at the Archdale Unity Day a month ago, I sort of like went on the side over to see the space, just to like see a few weeks after they had done all this work, how was it faring? And there were just like several people just sitting there like reading and hanging out, and it was just, having been there before and seeing no one was using it that way, it was exactly what you're talking about, like can you make spaces positive and activate them. At Mildred Haley specifically,
They want their rose gardens back.
yes, we've talked about the rose garden, which we're going to work on, because it's actually part of an area. So not to go too into the weeds, but Mildred Haley is a site where we're both doing a private redevelopment on a portion of the site in partnership with some nonprofit partners who are well known in the JP community. So that's Urban Edge, the Community Builders, and JPNDC. For kind of about half the site. But the other half of the site is where we're putting those transformative city capital dollars to basically do like a wholesale gut renovation that's also a green retrofit, that where the units will stay BHA units, but they'll look and feel really different, and they'll be much healthier for people. And actually one of the key things that came up in that project was that we absolutely had to put money into that overall project budget to just do like totally new like landscaping and active open space functions for our residents around that area. So it's not just like we redo the buildings, it's like we really think about how to have that active space. And then on the partners development side, we've recently been working on how their master plan can put the square back in Jackson Square, so that at that corner, because right now, if anybody knows the T corner, there's sort of this like pinched intersection where right now it's just like pedestrians and bicyclists and cars all kind of running into each other, but there's no there. And one of the problems is then people make a there in front of your constituent's window, right? And we need places for people to constructively hang out and spend time. And so we're actually working on a whole exciting design to sort of bring that activity down to Center Street in a nice and organized way.
Great, and I have this one last question before we move on, because I want to make sure that my council colleagues have time to ask questions. And I want to say this before I ask the final question, is that a lot of what this line of questioning for me is about, if we're gonna come down with an iron fist when it comes to safety and compliance and arrests and evictions, I want us to come down with an iron fist when it comes to making sure that people have quality, dignified, healthy housing, right? We want to make sure that one of the things that came up during the coffee hours in public housing specifically was that people had a lot of very specific issues that they had with their development, but for the most part, it was this sense of not being cared for, being forgotten, not feeling heard because they're poor and they live in public housing. There was the general feeling in all of the rooms that we went to was, they don't really care, or like, I know that we're poor, but like, people teary-eyed talking about how their medicines were being stolen because the security guard refuses to like hold their packages even though they have the infrastructure in the building. It's just a general sense that because we are poor, because we live in public housing, we are not being paid attention to. And so I want to make sure that with public safety, with arrests, with no trespassing, with making sure that we have cameras, with starting eviction processes with people who are bad actors, that people also feel like they are not just being policed, but they also feel like they're being invested in. We had a hearing here, my committee had a hearing that talked about asthma triggers in housing and the health of housing. I am incredibly concerned about air quality and trash and rodents in public housing. It's one of the places where it's the most visible. On Spring Street in West Roxbury, when we had the coffee hour there, they had a rodent infestation and they had to do something, with the trash and the way that the garbage was being picked up or the way that it was being stored, and mold, air quality, rodents, roaches, all asthma triggers. Asthma obviously disproportionately impacts Black and brown children who have 4 times higher rates of emergency room visits. So can we talk a little bit about housing quality at BHA, whether it be air quality, rodent management, and trash in public housing?
Definitely, and I'll say a couple of words, but maybe also if Joel and Nick want to join just on the trash piece. Yeah, so air quality is completely central to our green retrofit rationale. It's not just about the city's carbon targets are important, like all of us doing what we can to meet climate change is important, but it is also critically important that our residents have good public health, and what we see is that we have a lot of older buildings where we might not have any ventilation that really goes outside of the unit, and so you can end up in a situation where even if you're turning on, if you have a gas stove, which we know also affects air quality, and then you turn on the ventilator, it's just moving the particles around inside the apartment, right? And that's something where the BHA has been focused on air quality and public health for a long time. When we went to become smoke-free public housing, we were the first one in the country to do that, and everybody followed us. And people said, oh, you can't do it, it can't be done. We did it, and it was a huge effort. But this is kind of, in some ways, that was easier, that was about behavior. This is about our physical systems, and it's going to take an enormous amount of frankly resources from everybody, city, state, and feds for us to get it done. That's why we had the EPA administrator at our site a couple of weeks ago. But it's essential. I think that that's the sort of big systems question. When it comes to rodents, trash, anything in the unit, that's something where that's part of the reason why we're just in general focusing our inspectors in a different way, because we want to make sure we know about that stuff and we're getting it immediately, right? So that people are not having a long situation like that. We also obviously have to work with our tenants. Often rodent infestations have to do as well with how food is being stored and stuff, and so it can be a human services process too. But the other thing that we've been really engaged in, and the reason I asked these folks to come up, is because we've been really looking at how the BHA manages its own dumpsters and trash system to try to cut down on rodents that are coming from out there, because we can talk to our tenants about what they do in their units, but it's pretty important for us to be managing things, whether it's at Spring Street or Mildred Haley ourselves, even better. So I don't know, guys, if you can speak to it a little bit.
Good morning, Joel Will, Deputy Administrator. I will add a few comments and then turn it over to my colleague Nick Kelly. I think you heard much of it from Administrator Bach, but essentially our strategy around sustainability that we are quickly working to accelerate and move into real world improvements is one that is centered around delivering improvements that people can see and feel. There's a lot of things that we could be doing to reduce emissions that would be not directly experienced by tenants. But when I look at this, and the administrator has really charged me with working across the agency with our departments to help long-term planning, guide us to goals that are expensive and challenging, but in some ways almost priceless in terms of the benefits. It's that if we get a call about folks and the roof is leaking or there's mold in a unit because water comes in from the outside, that when we think about making improvements to that building or development or that region or across the portfolio, it's not simply about changing out the heating system, which may be incredibly important, something we're required to provide and that we want to improve the quality of and reduce the emissions of, but that we're doing more work towards whole building transformations that fundamentally creates a healthier living space. So what that means is that we have well north of $1 billion in capital backlog and about $35 million per year in capital funds from the federal government currently. And we're needing to plan scales of work that are just well beyond that annual or even multi-year in order to do that. But when we're able to line up the city and state and federal investment and work that through kind of the system as it functions in Massachusetts, we're able to plan out in such a way that kind of delivers that holistic project. I think based on sort of just a scarcity of funds, housing authorities in general have done a lot of piecemeal work because we have to deliver basic sort of sanitary code. And unfortunately, and to your point, Councilor Lara, Chair Lara, the health conditions are different. We know this. On asthma, we have good data from the Boston Public Health Commission. So I think the overall plan is to go more holistically and aggressively around whole building work. And that requires partnership because it by far exceeds what we get from HUD or from the state for the state units on an annual basis. But it also has returns that are just tremendously more impactful. On trash infrastructure, it's a little bit of a different setup. It does require thinking about the physical layout of the space and also the containers and infrastructure themselves. But the primary thing there is that the majority of our sort of regular trash is based on the city, or it's tied to the city's trash contracts, right? So we additionally have other work, like construction work that will have construction debris. We'll have people from the outside come and leave their trash there, which we do try to prosecute or deter. But there is an issue right now with spacing and container design. And so part of our work right now is thinking about what are the small scale improvements we can do there, but also how is that going to inform our relationship and partnership with the city in terms of the multi-year waste contracts that the city goes out to bid for. So can we bring in new information and think about what we do on our sites that then helps inform specifications we are bound by. In other words, we have a limited set of funds, but we can invest in certain improvements on BHA sites, but it has to match what the city has arranged for in its multi-year contracts. So I'm going to turn it to Nick for a little bit more maybe on that specific line of work, and we're here for questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Just really briefly on the trash and recycling front, we've been doing a complete audit of all of our dumpsters, all of our recycling bins at all of our sites over the last year, and have been doing that with outside help to rethink the way that we do trash and recycling at BHA. We know that our current system is not working very well, and it contributes to rodents and other quality of life hazards for residents. So we're going to be trying a pilot project at a couple of our sites with some innovative designs that colleagues at the New York City Housing Authority have adopted. We're going to see what works, what doesn't, and then we're hoping to roll out a broader plan for new dumpsters, new recycling, even maybe composting if it's applicable and helpful, to reduce the rodent problem and to really help increase recycling and reduce the eyesore that we know that these containers are at our sites. So we are working hard to do that currently. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councilor Lara. We've also been joined by Councilor Sharon Durkin. Chair recognizes Councilor Frank Baker. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, congratulations, good luck. Good morning, everybody. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but I just have a couple of questions. So, Kenzie, you had talked about teams doing inspections and teams doing work orders. Are those teams all employees of the BHA? Are they all like they get a check from the city or BHA or?
Yeah, I will note separately, HUD, the federal agency, also sends inspectors in, but the ones I was talking about, it is all BHA.
Yeah.
But critically, we wanted there to be a little more space between the people managing the units day to day and the people who inspect them, so that there's an outside set of eyes that says, like, hey, maybe this needs attention. So that's part of the reason we've changed it functionally internally.
Yeah, and then the work orders, they're also your current employees. We didn't have to contract for that, because that sounds like.
Right.
Because, like, when you first started talking about inspections, that's all well and good, but here's a list of things that needs to happen. That's more important. So, I mean, 1,100 work orders in a month at Mary Ellen McCormick, that probably a lot of small stuff that you're just able to get out of the way, but congratulations on that. That's a good.
Thank
Can
you.
you talk about, so who are they? Are you taking them, inspectors, you're taking them from someplace to start inspecting now, if it's something they don't do, and then also the work orders, like, how are you doing that much more with the same people?
Yeah, so great two questions. So on the inspector side, actually we saw, and again, I'll give Kate credit, Kate saw the opportunity, along with David Gleichart, Deputy Administrator, who's here, who's over inspections and a number of other things, saw the opportunity because the feds went from having the inspections that we do of the leased housing units, the voucher units, they moved it from once a year to once every 2 years. And so that's the whole other side of the house. But what that meant was our same inspector pool didn't have to do as many inspections because it's half as many, right? So that was, and I said this right in my opening comments, but the BHA now administers more vouchers than we have public housing units. So basically what that did was cut their workload in half, which then enabled us to say, oh, well, let's make that back up by having them do the inspections internally on public housing. So it's great for us because it means we get to keep the same staff, we get to use their expertise, and it's not like it's reducing work for our managers, because frankly, our managers are some of the most overburdened people in our whole system, right? So that's that. And on work orders, so as you said, yeah, it's our staff. We have hundreds of tradespeople at the BHA, something we're very proud of, and they do great work. One of the things that we're really working on is how to bundle the work more efficiently, because as you can imagine, right, on the one hand, there's organizing things by urgency, and often there are just a lot of, if your toilet's backed up, right, there's certain things, electrical, plumbing, et cetera, where you just got to send somebody. But at the same time, if there's a bundle of electrical jobs all at one site and I can send an electrician just there for the day instead of having him bop around 6 different sites, we're going to get a lot more electrical work done, right? So that's one of, when we're talking about kind of some of the behind the scenes reorganization that's happening with the work orders, I mean, the BHA is always trying to do things with less resource than we really need, and there is a limit to how much any of our staff can just do in a day, but we think we can get more done more efficiently with that kind of retooling.
Excellent. And in your initial statements, you talked about hoarding also. I've come across way too many hoarding cases in my 12 years here, and they're very, very difficult. And I've been amazed at how we've been able to handle them as the city, and wrapping services around. Just actually finished one of them up, and it ended up working out okay.
That's great.
So we talked about offices a little bit. Shemaine, you have 5 offices, 6 recruits coming, 5 dispatchers. But what are the security guards? Who are they? Do they work for? Do they get a BHA check? How many of them are there? And like, so should the security guards be part of your officers? Or can you explain the difference there? A little bit?
Sure. So we have, thank you for the question, Councilor. We have approximately 14 buildings across the city that have safety officer coverage. Their role is very specific insofar as they really serve as concierge at the front desk to ensure that individuals are
So
signed.
you just said safety officers. Is that what you mean by the security officers? They're not your 5 officers that you have now?
No, sir. That's the formal title, they're safety officers, but for laypersons or just for clarification, they are the security officers, the police officers.
In just 14 buildings?
That's correct, sir.
And they're like at the front door?
That is correct.
And how many, if you're in 14 buildings, how many safety officers do you
There's
have?
approximately 60 of them.
60 of
somewhere
them?
in that neighborhood.
And they're on a contract?
I'm sorry.
No,
Are
they're
they
BHA employees.
BHA employees?
Yes, sir.
And are they getting paid the same as what our security guards are getting paid here? Less, better?
Probably less. I mean,
Less?
I'll just break in to say that one of the things that the chief's been really doing is working on like both raising standards and raising pay there, right? And so, I mean, the reality was until the most recent contract, I mean, the pay was just so low that we couldn't keep people in those roles.
Yeah.
We've raised it a bit, but I do think like there's a continuing, there's a continuing effort to ricochet upwards in terms of professionalization of that role, but you also have to be able to afford compensation commensurate.
Yeah, well, we should be looking at how we compensate them better, and, you talked about low morale. It's a lot of times money that is low morale, and I've come across in different buildings, it can tend to be sometimes the security guard out front that's leaving the back door open, or that live-in sort of maintenance person. How many buildings have live-in maintenance people?
We have resident custodians,
Yeah.
which is what they're called on the senior side, and then
Yeah.
we have special assignment laborers, which is what they're called on the family side, and we generally have one of those at each site.
At every building?
Yeah, because the idea is that it's somebody who's there if literally something happens at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
right?
that's just a one-off building with it. Unlike Mary Ellen McCormick has multiple buildings, that'd just be like, I know Lower Mills has that live-in person. And I'm not taking it from anybody that lives in or the security guards. That's just what my experience has happened in different places. And once we've been able to identify that problem, move them along, it tends to get better. So do you think with the 6 recruits, you're gonna be able to, so they won't be based in housing developments. They're gonna follow what the city districts are, so D3, District 3, District 6, they'll kind of...
Good question. So what we did was to ensure that we were able to cover the city geographically, we just mimicked the police districts. So the officers and the teams will be assigned to a police district charged with working with the residents, managers, and the police district in that area.
Yeah, so there's different places that don't have any, and like South Boston has a lot, Franklin Field is a huge development, so they'll obviously have more
Absolutely.
officers, and I'm glad you're thinking about it. It sounds like something that can help us. Do you work with the brick at all? We talked a lot about cameras, and I don't know if we call you administrator, do we call you? I think we got to come
Whatever
up with
you
a better
like,
name than administrator. Like, it's good to hear you talk about the benefits of cameras, not spying on people. We're not putting them in hallways, but in those entrances and exit plans. I had worked pretty diligently on a plan in the South End after some shootings had happened. This is going back a couple years, and we had found out that the BHA cameras weren't being shared with the police cameras. And if there's daylight shootings, that we need to be able to identify people. This was a daylight shooting, middle of the South End, and we had worked on cameras in entrances and exit plans. So, are we now fully integrated with the Boston Police? Can they look at your cameras if they want, or they have to call the administrator, who would call you, who would call somebody else?
No, I don't want to, I can't speak to my predecessors or what happened in the past. What I can
Right.
share with you is the outgoing administrator and the current administrator prioritized ensuring that we honored that relationship that we had with BPD, the brick, as well as our residents. So we are now in a capacity where we can enter into that conversation around sharing. But what happened in the past, I don't know, but it's been a priority to make sure that BPD now has access.
Yeah,
to
and
our
what
cameras.
happened wasn't there was nothing nefarious going on. It's just like, oh, there's 15 cameras around here, but the shooting happens like this and the person flees over here. We can't necessarily access, the public can't necessarily access those cameras, and there's none here. It's just,
Yeah.
it's back to relationships and people, hey, you know what, I want to be part of this solution here. So as long as we're weaving in the camera plans together, because I think if they're used for I hate to say reaction, but it's, a lot of times it's reaction to crime. What happened this way? Did we get a plate there? So it's good to see that you are working with Brick. And we had talked quite a bit about environmental studies, lighting, cameras. Do we actively do those environmental studies? Environmental studies being, you know, okay, let's walk in Mary Ellen McCormick where you would need to walk to get to the train station. How is that path lit? Are we actively pursuing that?
Yeah, so we're required by HUD to do an annual capital planning process, and it kind of like builds up from the site. So that both the residents and the management at the sites will kind of talk about what are the things that we need here, and then they'll talk to capital construction, and our capital construction folks will also come out and look at the site themselves. Again, new eyes, maybe they see something. I think the challenge that we have had with lighting, as with all capital things, is what Joel mentioned. Like, we think it's somewhere between $1 and $1.5 billion in deferred capital at BHA, and we get like $32 million a year from HUD.
Yeah.
So the capacity to do all the projects that we'd like to do is limited, but sometimes what we found is if we work together, then there's opportunities for whether it's earmarks or a private entity wants to donate some money to solve a problem, you know, or like the residents, you know, some of our cameras have been paid for in part by resident organizations saying, hey,
Yeah.
this is something, if BHA puts in, can we put in a little, like, to make it happen? So,
Yeah, and we paid for some through development that was closed.
right, exactly. So I think that's the thing for us is like, it's still worthwhile to identify the needs, even if we can't meet them all instantly, because then we can problem solve together about how to meet
Yeah,
them.
what'd you say, 1.5 in deferred?
Billion.
Yeah, that we'll never reach that.
Well, what we're trying to do is say, if we're going to spend big ticket money, let's spend it on total transformations
Yeah.
so that people feel like, hey, I'm living in new housing, it's healthier. And I think the interesting thing is with the federal money that's available, with the opportunity with BHA to bond in support of this work, because as long as we continue to own the housing, like, we think there's some opportunities to
Yeah,
move big
in
needles.
doing the projects like in Charlestown and Mary Ellen McCormick,
Yeah.
I think they'll ultimately pay dividends. I'm supportive of both of those. And so, thank you for talking about Franklin Field also. Was that an event happening up there? Or was that just like nice day, people hanging out? So, like, because if it was a block party or a sanctioned event, then the police would know what's happening. So the police had no idea there was a gathering up there. It was a private gathering.
It was a private gathering, and frankly, it wasn't one that would have merited a permit. It was
Yeah.
it was a private
All
gathering
on.
in scale as well.
Yeah, just a couple people. That's a shame. And the incident that happened, that was the original reason for this happening, is that you had talked quite a bit about it earlier on about subleasing, and
No,
did that have anything to do with this?
No, I addressed it because it was a question in the hearing order, but there was no subletting in that case.
Yeah, that was a weekend party that got out of control and whatever else. I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Chair recognizes Councilor Liz Braden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here today. I start off by giving a shout out to Chief Bedford and your team, and also shout out to District.
Yeah, just wait a moment.
Yeah, start over again. A shout out to Chief Benford and your team, and also District 14 community service officers for helping us resolve an ongoing and difficult situation. It was ongoing. It's been resolved over many months at Patricia White, and I really think that your staff dealt with the situation with sensitivity and empathy and professionalism that was very impressive, and it was really nice to see it be resolved and get to a good conclusion at the end of the day. One issue, you said you have 11 districts. The 16-hour coverage and the districts mimic police districts, but we're in District 14, so there's 11 districts. What district is District 14 put in? Alton Brighton. Where do we fit in the map of resources in terms of staffing and
Sure.
for BHA? security
Sure. So
officers?
just for geographical purposes, through a public safety lens, in terms of the model that we're using, Alston Brighton falls under District 14.
District 14.
So there'll be a team that's assigned to District 14, to Area D, specifically D14, to work with the district and the officers.
And at this point, I know when we were resolving this other issue, and have been at Patricia White and with community police officers and your staff, listening to constituents. At that stage, they were having to come from Mildred Haley or somewhere if there was an issue. Do we have anybody based in District 14, like from your staff, or do they still have to come over from Mildred Haley?
As of today, there are 5 area-wide teams. So there's only one team that's assigned, present day, that's assigned to Area D, which includes the South End, Back Bay, Alston, and Brighton. So when we get the new officers, there'll be a team that's assigned, there'll be 2 officers assigned to Area D, one to the Back Bay and the South End, and one to District 14. Very specifically, to answer your question in terms of an officer over there, right now we do not have anyone presently permanently assigned over there, and they would have to come from another section of the city, yes.
Yeah, we appreciate that, but it does illustrate the fact that you're stretched very thin on the ground, and that you have 16-hour coverage. The other question I had was with youth programming. My first engagement with our BHA community was very early on in 2016. COVID I think it was just at the beginning of the COVID emergency, and we had some incidents of involving firearms and drugs and whatever. And it became very apparent that our youth programming is really lacking. And I'm just wondering, in terms of coordinating with BCYF and other services, city services for youth programming, what is our relationship? Just to put it into context, at Commonwealth we've got about 150 to 200 kids, and at Faneuil we have 350. So you're talking about 500 young people. And you know, we sort of cobble together. We beat the bushes. We get funding from our state legislators who, you know, they go and get some money in the state budget. We get money from local developers or whatever. But it's very piecemeal and not very consistent, not very predictable. And is there any way we can just have a sort of a more predictable youth programming? It's a lot of young people. Inevitably, it's very difficult to keep them on the straight and narrow and have them gainfully programmed so that they can have a rich experience of you know, programs in the neighbourhood. And then just connecting, because we have a lot of resources out there, but it's just, do we have resident service coordinators who can actually identify resources in the community that we connect all of this to the youth that really need the services?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question. I want to say one word on it, and then I've got Lydia Agro and Nick Kelly just to say a couple more. But, you know, I think it's really important to stress that the BHA is providing a lot of the family housing proportionately these days in the city. So, for instance, with Faneuil Gardens, we were doing that assessment with the community builders, and it's like that whole area of Brighton, 15% of households have families under 18. But in the precinct that is Faneuil Gardens, 85% of households have kids under 18. So what that tells you is it's the BHA that's housing all the families in Brighton these days, right? Disproportionately. And so that means we need resources that support our kids, right? Mm-hmm. And we agree with you that it's a patchwork. Like, you know, I think about a place like Gallivan, where we have a BCYF right in the middle of the development that really serves those kids, and that's like an amazing resource. We don't have that everywhere in the city. And so it is something, we recently created a BHA Youth Council where this is an area that when that money was cut in 2001, kind of like the police department, the BHA basically just like stepped back from and let a trip because we didn't have any money to do it. And I think now we're in this headspace of we still don't have money, but we're really trying to work with all of our partners to make sure that we have that more consistent provision, because it's just like completely essential to our young people feeling invested in. And what I want is a world in which everybody is jealous of the BHA kids, where it's like, gosh, when you get into BHA, not only do you get stable housing, but also there's like all these programs and opportunities and scholarships that you get, and it's not fair. And what about the people who don't get to live in BHA, right? Like that's the conversation I want us to get to. And I'll just have Lydia and Nick say a word about youth, and particularly in Brighton.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lydia Agro, Chief of Media and Engagement for the Boston Housing Authority, and specifically in Allston-Brighton. I think, as you know, Councilor, the Allston-Brighton CDC has been able to step in to some degree and provide some youth programming at both Faneuil and Commonwealth. That programming right now is dependent on state funding, so it's been a little bit year to year, and I agree, it's as Kenzie said, it's a little piecemeal. They're serving a younger population from about 8 to 12. There isn't really a good plan right now for teenagers in place at those sites. We are looking more globally at youth programming, as Administrator Bach said, and she talked about the Franklin Field programming that we're looking into to put in place. We're in process of trying to bring some staff on board for that and really trying to look at that potentially as a model for other sites, which at the end of the day will require funding, but we're doing that work at Franklin Field and looking at that with an eye for other developments as that rolls out as a pilot to hopefully bring some of those services to other sites. And then each site sort of has a different iteration of what's in place for youth programming. So South Street has a youth center. At Haley, we're very actively engaged with Children's Hospital and the Boys and Girls Club to bring in programming there. That's in process. But yeah, globally, we're looking at a larger pilot project that would start at Franklin Field, and hopefully that we would be able to implement at other sites going forward, assuming that we can get the funds. So this is my plug for, we need help trying to find funds for that and raise some money for that, and I'll turn it over to Nick. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, the issue is the sort of unpredictability. Like, we sort of go cap in hand every year to get some money from the state budget, and it's that predictability, consistent quality programming. These are our kids. You were there for Unity Day. It was quite amazing at Faneuil.
That's great.
And I went to Unity Day at Commonwealth Housing, and I had parents pleading with me, "What are you going to do for our kids? They don't have the resources. It's really challenging." And I hope that we could, get across the board sort of conversation with BCYF and BPS for that matter about what can we do. Like, we have so much resources, we are spending so much on our education system. Like, we have to sort of see where the gaps are. Then the hoarding issue, we deal with this fairly regularly. I think it's a mental health issue. It tends to be more in an older population. And it's very distressing for everyone. What sort of resources have we got to bring to bear in that space with regard to hoarding and supporting folks to it is challenging.
Yeah, and to be honest, what we found is, we seek referrals when it seems like, it's a situation that's beyond just a talking to and a little bit of help, and often when it's a mental health challenge, that's where it is. We've been really grateful for the partnership of Age Strong and some referral partners through them on the senior side. But as I mentioned in my remarks, we have not found kind of sufficient, even just services existing for our family folks who are under the age of seniority. I should say the BHA, because we house folks out of homelessness, we do work with quite a lot of partners, some of whom provide services for our residents, on an ongoing basis. The idea is that we house them, but then they're going to have a service provider checking in. And those people can be very helpful with this issue. And so for us, it's particularly acute if someone's been housed and doesn't have that service provider partnership, because it's also a question of eyes, right, and frequency of visit, and is somebody paying attention to this issue before it gets more and more out of hand. But I would say we don't currently feel like we have the list of referral programs in place that we need for this. And it's really hard for our managers because, of course, counselors know, it's like, as soon as you're aware of it, it's like, well, what are you doing about it? But oftentimes you're literally like, well, my manager could spend the whole day sorting this one person's apartment out for like several weeks, right? But they can't, of course, do that because of everything else they've got to do. So I do think it's something we're struggling with, and we would love the council's like support on.
And tell me more about the BHA Youth Council, because that really, my bells went off when I heard that. Like, is that something we should be tapping into with our population out in Alston-Brighton?
Yeah, so we're excited about the BHA Youth Council, in part because it's a pan-BHA thing, so it's like it's youth from all different developments, and which I think at various points people have tried, but it's been hard to make happen. And we've got this contract with Spoke, and they've been really great at convening that. And it's been this really intentional community space for our BHA youth, and so I think it's really been building relationships across all the developments. It's also been intentionally like a leadership program. So in addition to doing a lot of art and self-expression and stuff, actually our BHA Youth Council members were at all the Unity Days, and they were doing surveys with other young people at the sites to like talk about like what do you like about BHA? What don't you? What do you want to change? What are your big ideas? And so the idea was to really pull all that together into a report for us that was like, both the voices of youth, but also being collated by youth. And it's just been amazing to see them all just become so much more empowered through this process. And that's really what we want, is like resident leaders and residents to feel empowered, and not us kind of intuiting what people need, but people really feeling like they have a voice to say it. And we have a ton of really great, accomplished, longtime resident leaders at BHA, but many of them are now getting quite old. And they're the first ones to say, like, we want the young people, we want them involved. And so the Youth Council is a new initiative of ours to try to do that.
And in terms of developing new leadership, like, I think that's really critical to the success of a BHA facility, is good, strong community leadership. Is there anything in terms of, do we need resources to help support that, like pump priming in terms of capacity building?
Yeah, totally. We launched it as a pilot, and now we want to make it like permanent, and so we're literally in the midst of figuring that out, like on the funding front. And similarly to the Catch as Catch Can, we don't want to every year be like finding out whether we're going to get Success Link spots or finding out whether we're going to get this, that, or the other grant. Like, we want to be able to say we're having a BHA Youth Council. It's something we're doing. And I think similarly with your point about just services for young people in general, I mean, part of where I'd like to get to is a world in which BHA has at our fingertips how many young people of what ages we have at every development. Like, we are data rich, right? We can't share it, but like in terms of the individuals, but in terms of the aggregate, we know who lives where. And so I'd love to get to a place where we basically, like, for each of our sites, we're like, okay, this is a family development with this many teenagers and this many children, and like, so it needs this complement of services. And maybe we could have variety a little bit in like, is there a good BCYF nearby, or are we partnering with somebody else? But a little bit more uniformity where we know that there's like minimum access across the board would be great.
Thank you. And I know others have questions, so I'll hold my questions. And I know.
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Braden. Chair, appreciate your patience, and Chair recognizes Councilor Ruth C. Louisiana at large.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank and congratulate Administrator Bach. Thank you, Chief Shu and Superintendent Cullinan, for the work that you do on behalf of the city. Administrator Bach, you said two things that I wanted to just follow up on. I grew up next to the Gallivan BCYF, and that's where I played basketball. And I was really jealous of the kids there because there was all of that community organizing that, because if I wanted to play basketball. So I think that is a good aspiration. There are folks who have felt that, me. And I think that when it was at Unity Days and throughout, hearing people talk about wanting more community spaces for their own children, and to like really look at the fear on the face of parents, because they know what happens when we're not investing in sort of those community spaces for our young people. And so just wanted to uplift that from the Unity Days that I heard when I attended, that I heard about that. And then also you talked about bonding, which I think is incredible, bonding for more of our housing. We have such a wealthy city, and we have a lot of work that we can be doing with respect to our own resources, with respect to our fiscal strength, to really be looking at how we are redeveloping a lot of these properties and investing in social housing. So just wanted to put that in there. A lot of my colleagues have actually already addressed the questions that I had regarding public safety. So I just wanted to sort of take it a little bit in a bit of a different direction regarding when we're talking about violence or we're talking about the issues, root causes of poverty is really important for us to look at. And when we look at the wait list for BHA has a longer wait list than the number of people who live in BHA residence. And it's important for us when we're having this conversation to remember that families that live in BHA properties are just like every other family in the city of Boston who want the same exact thing. If there's any essentialism, it is poverty. And I know that there's work being done with the FSS program, and that has been done over time. How are we looking at working on the issues of structural poverty for folks who find themselves in need of housing via Boston Housing Authority, working with groups like Compass that really think about this as a way not only to help our families, but to also think about how we open up opportunities for other families that need to get into BHA housing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I'm going to ask my Deputy Administrator, David Gleich, just to come up for a moment, because he's actually over both our FSS program, that's Family Self-Sufficiency, and it's a federally authorized program that lets us make it so that families that, somebody gets a new job and they start to earn more money, instead of paying us the additional increment in rent, they get to put it into a savings account, which they can then use towards something like buying a house or other major family investments. And David will talk about that program in partnership with Compass has grown enormously in the last 5 years. And then also, thanks to you all, our first-time homebuyer program at BHA, we're only a few months into that, and it's already just paying huge dividends for our families in a context in which none of our Section 8 voucher holders managed to buy a home through the Section 8 to home ownership program in all of 2022, and I think it was like 10 for the prior decade total, and we've already exceeded that number just in the last few months with the new program. So I'll let David just speak a little bit about those two things.
Just on FSS, in about 2018, our program was around 200 families, and we were able to start working with Compass Working Capital, which is a group that specifically works on FSS with programs in Massachusetts, but also across the country. And they were able to leverage a lot of private funding that allowed us to expand our FSS program dramatically. So we went from 200, now we have almost 1,500 families enrolled in the FSS program. We're actually, I think, the 4th or 5th largest FSS program in the country. And so what that means is that combined, those 1,500 families, as their earned income increases, we put aside an escrow account for them. And combined, there's $5 million in escrow. So as those families start to graduate, they'll get to see those savings. They can use that savings for whatever goals they've established in the FSS program, whether it be education or it could be for a down payment for a home, really whatever they set their goals at with the FSS. So we're super proud of that work. We're hoping to continue that work with Compass for another 5 years, continue expanding the number of families that are enrolled in FSS, and we think that's a great way to promote economic mobility within our population. On the First Home program, we've got a number of families now. I think there's 17 families that have closed on opportunities. They're either low income or, a lot of those families are coming from the voucher program. I think we've also got some families coming out of public housing that are getting those opportunities as well. And so even in an extremely tough housing market that it is right now, because we have the resources of the down payment assistance, some of that coming from ARPA funding as well. So we're able to couple that with the city funding that exists, plus the ARPA funding. So it's a large down payment assistance that's allowing those families to get those opportunities. So continuing to work on that. Hopefully we see more successes as we move through time here.
And Nick or David, do you want to say anything about Empath, the AMP Up program? So Empath, which is of course led by former Mayor Kim Janey, there's a partnership that we're involved in to again, to really build economic mobility. Do you want to say
Yeah,
more?
just very briefly, in addition to the FSS partnership, we've also been really excited to launch the AMP Up program, which is a free program available for all BHA residents that offers economic mobility counseling. And it's a really exciting model because it's one of the few evidence-based solutions that we've seen for place-based poverty solutions for helping folks rise out of poverty. And hundreds of residents are now enrolled in that. We're almost done enrolling, but we still have a few spots left. So I really encourage folks to enroll, but we're hoping to see real results and as a result of a research study being done as well, and really show that residents can rise out of poverty while living in public housing. So we think that's a really important lesson to draw from the AMP Up program as well.
Thank you. And I guess just a theoretical question about sort of the intention. Is the intention when you participate in because structural poverty, is the goal to get people out in the FSS program and an AMP Up to be able to one day not live in public housing, or, which I think is also a lofty goal, and which is I think what you just stated, is that while being there, that you don't feel sort of like locked in, that you too can think about what economic mobility looks like even while living in public housing, you know, while we recognize the federal poverty limits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We want our housing to be a place where people can flourish, right? And so we want our people like who live in BHA today to be able to make more money, save for their families, pursue their goals. David mentioned FSS goals because sure, you could set your FSS goal as being that you want to buy a house and you want to use the money for a down payment, but it could also be that you want to take, you know, you want to go back to college, you know, or you want to do or you want to start a small business. Like it could be any number of things that you devote those savings towards. I mean, I think that we have 37,000 people on the wait list. We certainly want to celebrate when BHA families have the opportunity to buy a home, for instance, and then, yeah, they're not our tenants anymore, but, you know, like Councilor Flaherty, they're always our former tenants, and we're proud of them. I think that we, though, also, you know, one of the things that we grapple with at BHA today is that in the past, 10% of BHA units turned over every year. Like the dynamic was that families would start to make a little more money, and maybe they'd buy a home, or maybe they wouldn't buy a home, but they just rent in the private market at there was sort of what people called naturally occurring affordable housing, which usually meant like not especially great quality, but you know, available, right? The thing is, those things aren't available anymore. So now we've got incredibly low turnover at BHA, and we're super proud to provide that stable housing for our residents, but it is part of the reason why the wait list doesn't move, right? And so it just reminds you that every level of the housing market is connected, because even though what we're managing is sort of like the bottom rungs of the ladder in terms of like the most affordable housing, the reality is like we care a lot about rungs 3, 4, 5 of the ladder, because they also provide us with the opportunity to serve more people, and the fact that they don't exist is a huge problem for us right now.
Thank you. I just have one final question, but also wanted to shout out, I think that BHA 2 weeks ago filed a hearing order to look at dumpster collection and how we can do better at large buildings. And I think the pilot, I was talking to Deputy Administrator Wool about this, that you all are running and thinking about the work you're doing, outsourcing some of that, I think it can also be a model for the city. With respect to Franklin Field specifically though, are there plans, and you talked about the investments that this council has made that has really allowed you to expand the youth work there, which I think is incredible. But as a development, and we look at the built environment, how sometimes our built environment can be depressing. It could be stripping people of their dignity, not dignity affirming. And I think about all of these other, not all, because it's still moving as we'd like. There's plans for redevelopment. I drive by often in the area, Franklin Field. It's an area that could use rethinking in terms of architectural design, how we affirm people's dignity while they're living in public housing. Are there plans for redevelopment that still will preserve the deeply affordable nature, I guess, of the housing that we provide via public housing?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're working on is, so we know that we're going to be doing green retrofits at Franklin Field. And what I would say is like how externally transformational that is does depend a bit on funding, but Joel is very actively chasing the maximum amount, and we will come to you all for support letters as well, because basically the dynamic is we can totally change the units on the inside in terms of, like changing our energy sources, mechanical ventilation, but also new kitchens, right? Like a new, and then investing a lot in the building envelopes in terms of like sealing them up, making them good so we can, but it won't transform the thing that you're asking about, right? Which is the physical appeal and look of the site. At Haley, in the units that we're holding on to, we're doing this work and more, and that's enabled by the city capital budget grant. So at Haley, what we're doing is we're still not taking the buildings down, but the way that we're transforming them involves like adding a bunch around, so that basically like it's a complete architectural transformation, and it's felt that way. And you can basically add spaces like by the way that you add these additional envelopes onto the buildings. And we've done it very successfully a few times in the past at the BHA, but it's been kind of like one-offs. So, the interesting thing is that it's capital dollars, like you say, like that's what's enabling that at Haley. Traditionally, capital dollars weren't really on the table for this redevelopment work because the redevelopment work involved giving the properties away. So what's interesting now is that we're kind of focused on how do we do redevelopment while continuing to maintain public control. That has some challenges, but one of its huge opportunities is that we can bond for that work. So I will just say, I'm not currently in the position to promise that we can do the same full transformation we're doing at Haley at the Franklin Field site, but you're not the only person asking that question, and I think that we would love to be able to do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Louis-Jean. Chair recognizes City Council President Ed Flynn. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the sponsors as well. Thank you to the administration panel that's here as well. I'm proud to represent probably the largest number of public housing developments in the city of any district, including St. Botolph, West 9th Street, Powers, Foley, Mary Ellen McCormick, West Dedham Street, West Broadway, Cathedral, Old Colony, and others. And like most or all district councils and at-large councils, really, we often get calls on the wait list. The 37,000 people on the waiting list, is that what you mentioned, Council?
Yeah, that's the public housing wait list, yeah.
And the 37,000 people on the waiting list, how long average would they wait to get into a unit?
So it can be a decade or more. The problem is it's not really an average because of that BHA's homeless priority, we do house people more quickly who are literally unhoused. So it varies, but it can be an extremely long time, Councillor.
So the unhoused community, do they get a apartment immediately, or not immediately, but maybe within a couple of months?
No, I wish that were the case. No, it's maybe actually I might ask David to come up again to speak to this. I mean, basically, even with people who are in homeless priority, they're often living in shelter for a long time before they access our housing resources, whether it's the public housing units or the vouchers. And of course, the reason for that is that we're not holding a bunch back waiting for anybody because there's such a crisis that someone's in the units, right? So it's like someone's living in the public housing units, someone's living on the vouchers, and we can't make one available to someone who's homeless or on the wait list until somebody leaves. But I don't know if, David, you want to speak just a little bit?
And David, add this into your comments also. The people that do receive housing because they're unhoused, is that including the group from Mass and Cass as well?
So our priority and preference system is a little bit complicated. So people are jumping on top of each other on our lists all the time. So because we have the homeless priority, but we also have other priorities in what we call priority 1 at the BHA. You could be displaced due to domestic violence. You could be displaced due to natural disaster. You could be displaced due to like a no-fault court-ordered eviction. But on top of that, we also have preferences for disabled, for veterans. So somebody with those extra preference points that's homeless could jump on top of the list for another homeless person. So like Administrator Bach was saying, it is very difficult to calculate exactly how long somebody could be waiting for housing. With respect to the people at Mass and Cass, we do a lot of work with the City of Boston Continuum of Care, the COC, but typically when we're working with them, we're trying to find voucher opportunities. So we're using housing choice vouchers, and obviously when folks are being referred for vouchers through the Continuum of Care, there's a service connection there. And so we do some direct referral programs like that, where we're expecting not only the services to help people like the people from Mass and Cass or other people who are in recovery find housing, but find the appropriate types of housing, and then have services connected for an ongoing basis to ensure their tenancy is a good one, or to hope their tenancy is a good one.
And there's a lot of different programs like that. Like I know, President Flynn, that you're familiar with the VASH vouchers for veterans and the services that they provide. And so there's a lot of population-specific stuff like that.
And just one final question on that point. The vouchers that people would receive, that could include housing outside of Boston, throughout the greater Boston region. Is that accurate?
Yes, so we administer vouchers all throughout the region. So what it is that the person has the option, right? So they can hunt for housing anywhere with their voucher.
Okay, thank you. So I want to get back to Chair Flaherty's comments at the beginning on the situation at Mary Ellen McCormick. And it was myself and Council Flaherty that brought that situation to the attention of the administrator and to the Boston Police. Having said that, what is the procedure when Boston Police makes an arrest or is on site for a major incident, disturbance? How do they notify you, Chief, immediately? And what role do you take, what role do you play in responding to it? And why wasn't the BHA police informed of that incident? Could I ask the chief if you responded, then I'll get to the superintendent?
Of course, sure.
Okay.
So the initial 911 call comes in, sir. Excuse me, my apologies. The initial 911 call comes in and we are notified. I mentioned it and I alluded to it in my comments earlier that when the officer gets on scene, the circumstances on scene may justify a different response or change what the reality of the call is. And what we found in that incident was it came in one way, but the responding officers encountered a very different scene, which really served as the basis for the conversation that myself and Superintendent Cullinane engaged around. How do we solve the issue with that gap area where something changes on scene? How do we get notified? So unfortunately, we were notified of an unresponsive person. However, was unaware of the change in circumstances. So that's something that we're working together on to try and solve that information tree so that we get the updates when the circumstances change, when the officers are on scene.
When were you notified of that situation?
I'm sorry?
When were you notified of that situation?
The initial call?
Yeah.
When it came in. So when the initial page went out from the operations division at the police department, we would have been notified.
So you were notified then?
Of the initial incident, yes.
Okay,
But it was listed as unresponsive person. So it just wasn't, it's just
Well,
a question of how it's coded when it first comes in, and we're trying to address that.
But here's my question. Why didn't you, or why didn't the BHA police notify the BHA administrator of this situation?
Of an unresponsive person?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty common call that comes in. It could be for a myriad of different scenarios as to why we wouldn't have notified, but primarily it's because they come in. They're pretty frequent that they do come in. However, unfortunate, and several of us are on that initial communication tree when the call goes out. The real piece that we have to solve here again is when the circumstances change, how do we solve that gray area so that we get notified in that instance?
I would want to know about that situation, though, if I were in that leadership position.
The unresponsive person?
if I was the BHA administrator or the Boston police captain.
We were notified.
So I think what President Flynn's getting at is this question of like, does it rise to the level where the public safety calls the administrator or
That's exactly right.
Right. And so what happened there is that in the instance where like somebody passes away on our sites, that's the type of thing that the chief is instantly in communication with me about. The challenge is that this one, the type of call that this was, could also be it could be coded the same way as someone is sleeping in a hallway, right? An issue which we take very seriously, we deal with, but I don't get a notification and Kate didn't get a notification every time that happens. So the issue we have is how do we capture and work with BPD to capture when what you thought was one type of call turns out to be another type of call, but they already sent the BHA a notification saying it's this lower priority type of call. So we've got to figure out how to get them to upgrade and change the notice so that that can come through our whole communication tree. And I just again want to say, and thank you to folks for raising this issue. It is something that both teams have been working together on quite intensively. It is somewhat a data issue. It's like a little bit like literally how the dispatch system works, and it has to do with the CAD and a bunch of things, but we are trying to fix it because as you anticipate, Council President, I obviously, like you said, want to be informed of everything significant that's happening on the sites.
And as the district councilor, and I probably speak for all my district council colleagues, we want to be notified as well, regardless of what time it happens in the day or night. Let me go to Superintendent Cullinane. Thank you, Superintendent. Superintendent, obviously in C6 on West Broadway, has partial jurisdiction or a good portion jurisdiction in and around the Mass and Cass area as well. Also with Mary Ellen McCormick, we're still short police officers, mandatory overtime. As the chief mentioned, we have a handful of BHA police officers. How are we able to provide the necessary public safety support to residents throughout BHA developments, knowing that we're so short-staffed as it is?
So I think what you said is that we're working in conjunction with the Boston Housing Authority Police to make sure that we have coverage there. I know that there have been a number of issues there, and we had that meeting where Captain Boyle, who oversees District 6, was there. We talked about having additional Code 19s, which is our walk and talks, patrols in those areas. So we are making the efforts to have additional resources in those areas. We will be graduating a new class of probationary officers in late October, so that's going to increase the numbers, and it's definitely going to allow us to put more resources in those areas.
Thank you, Superintendent. And we're fortunate in the C6 area to have an outstanding captain that's very responsive to the residents. But I am concerned, as you know, Superintendent, that we just don't have enough police officers in this city to effectively provide public safety. And throughout the city of Boston, I really don't see that many Boston police officers in BHA in and around public housing developments.
So what we're also doing is, and we're continuing to work on that. We have some supplemental officers in the districts that are coming in to assist with the staffing, some of the staffing challenges that we're currently having. We also have units that offer us some additional support in terms of the citywide bicycle unit. So we are working to move individuals around, in and around the city, in and around the housing developments, to support the district officers so that we can make sure that we have that coverage.
Superintendent, what can the Boston City Council do to help the Boston Police as we deal with a low number of police officers? What type of assistance would you recommend from us on how we can be helpful in advocating for more police?
I think the city council has been doing a great job. I think that the recruitment efforts is a big area that would be helpful. We currently have a new human resources director who's assisting with that. So just getting us out into the community so that people are aware that we have jobs available. But I think overall the city council has been doing a great job and has been very supportive of our efforts to increase staffing.
Thank you, Superintendent. One final point, Superintendent. I also represent the Chinatown community, as you know. We have many, or a handful, I should say, of Asian American police officers that are in A1. They do a terrific job. And in terms of community policing, they're outstanding. When residents see them in and around the neighborhood, walking, talking to residents, it's a level of comfort, and the professionalism these officers have for their job is outstanding to see. I see them every day. This young officer named Z. But are we able to continue recruiting officers of color and ensuring that they are in places where they're critically needed as well?
We are doing a really great job of trying to diversify the police force. Like I said, we have a new human resources director. We also have a new diversity, equity, and equity individual on staff, where that's specifically her role, where she addresses recruiting efforts and the diversity that goes along with that recruiting effort. So yes, it is something that we are addressing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Also give a shout out to Zizou, probably one of the best community offices and outreach offices we have. Chair recognizes City Councilor Large Julie Mejia. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, I was going to call you Mr. President. Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, before I start, I wanted to acknowledge and just ask about the time. How much time are you going to allow me?
Kind of just free flowing like
Okay.
it's been going, so yeah, no hammer.
Okay, no, I just want to
You have the floor. You've been very patient. So
manage
go
my
ahead.
expectations and show up in a way that is going to be respectful.
Always.
All right, so I'm just grateful to you all and all the hard work that you do to create the type of environment that our people deserve, especially around safety issues, because when we think about safety, I would really love for us to challenge ourselves to define what safety looks like, because safety to me might be different to you and vice versa. So Administrator Bach, I'd love to be able to work alongside your office to have a community-centered approach to define what safety looks like. And I'm curious, in your short time there, or what, if anything, you can point to that creates space for residents to define for themselves what safety looks like.
Yeah, and actually, we've got a healing circle happening imminently at Franklin Field that really has been, resident and youth and community led as kind of an immediate ask coming out of Sunday night's events. And I think that's an example of it's not up to all of us, and even Isaac's trauma team, which is fantastic, right, to decide what people need. It's also about creating space to listen. I think that actually in my 3 months of overlap with Kate Bennett, we went to almost every development together. We got to nearly all the elderlies, most of the families, and I've been trying to finish out the rest now that she's retired. But that was a lot about having authentic conversations with our residents and just talking about what are people's concerns, And I think it's important to, and the small things intersect with the big things, right? I mean, I think Councilor Baker mentioned packages. We have a huge issue with how to figure out how to better secure packages. It's the problem that everybody in every large multifamily building in the city has, because we didn't all used to live our lives out of Amazon and other delivery services. But for our seniors, if those are medicines, you know, if those are critical things and they're disappearing, like that's a real safety concern. And so it's that type of stuff.
And I'm curious, have you all have had any surveys or assessments? I know you talked about the young people, but I'm curious what, if any, data exists from BHA head of households who can really articulate their wishes and desires. Have you done any, or are there any data, points that we can refer to?
So it's actually something that we're planning, and it's something that my chief of staff, Taylor Kane's really been pushing and leading, because the BHA used to do that more regularly, like really survey all residents, and kind of like fell off in the pandemic. Did a lot of communicating with residents about, there's food, there's this public health info, et cetera, but a bit less of that, like taking in what people were experiencing and needing. And so, yes, the youth were doing this thing this summer, and that's great, but we've actually been talking about getting back to doing a real, like, citywide survey. The question is, we used to do them, and they were all paper, right? It was all, like, the last one I think that happened, I was at the BHA, it was in 2017, and it was sending a lot of paper letters out and having people send us back paper letters. We want to do it in the best way that gets to people through a mode of forms, and also we're very language access focused at the BHA, so figuring that out is a piece of what Taylor's been working on.
Yeah, and I'd love to just advocate that you create space for a community to help inform what kind of questions you're going to ask, because what we may believe is important to capture may be very different to what the people who are living the realities might think is important. So I would really encourage you all to take even a community-centered approach in designing that survey. I think that is important to do. I want to just talk a little bit about quality of life issues. I have, as a citywide counselor, have spent time in a lot of different housing developments, and people have brought me into their homes, and I have been incredibly disappointed and disheartened by the conditions in which people are living in. And when we think about safety, when we think about public safety, when we think about how do we create environments for people to see that their lives matter, it's hard for you to believe that your life matters when you're living in the conditions that are not suited for you to live in. So of course, hand in hand, that's what oftentimes feeds the violence. So I'm just curious, when you're talking about the repairs that you have done, can you just talk to us a little bit about kind of how we're going to accelerate improving the quality of life and conditions for people?
Yeah, I'm happy to, and maybe Josh, do you want to come up and talk about this a little bit? So Josh is leading, I mentioned that work order reduction effort that we're doing, which is really, it's both like helping our sites deal with big backlogs, and then also helping them like figure out how to handle the work better going forward, so that you're not always saying to people, oh, maybe that'll happen next month, right? Because we don't want that. Yeah, as administrator, I feel the same. Like, I'm now over a whole lot of housing units, and I want people to feel great about the space that they're living in. And we are playing catch up, but we're gonna more than catch up. We're gonna accelerate. So I don't know if Josh, you can speak to just some of the like improvements and changes we're making in the system, and also some of the technology that we're bringing in.
Absolutely. So as part of my role at the Boston Housing Authority, and per the direction of the previous Administrator Bennett, and continuing under Administrator Bach, I've been going through and doing a site-by-site assessment in tandem with our operations management team. As a director of inspections, I have sort of independent experience outside of the BHA operations world, and have sort of an independent view of it, which is why Administrator Bennett and Administrator Bach had sort of asked me to come along. And as part of that approach, we're looking at sort of systematic issues, as opposed to I think the BHA historically, because we have so many units, because we're so grossly understaffed, and because we have just so much work in front of us, we sort of stick our finger in the flood and never really address the water. And I think we're trying to sort of, as part of this, get to the root of the problem. And I think something basic like to quote The Office, we're limitless paper in a paperless world. So we're trying to use technology and get real-time information, incorporate data to tell us where to send resources, as opposed to sort of phone calls and sort of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You want to get in front of that. And I think as part of that, we plan on doing 100% of our living unit inspections this year, comprehensive. I did tell Administrator Bach, and she knows, and she's all in on this, that this would be painful as we went through unit by unit and sort of tried to address everything. And the BHA is willing to sort of take that on, and we're doing that. And I think, I think we're sort of running out of road as far as the pandemic goes, but, we didn't really do anything maintenance-wise for somewhere around 15 months. That's not to say we were probably working harder than we ever did, but we were running vaccination clinics and handing out winter coats. And Mary Ellen McCormick, sort of the basis for this meeting, we were doing food distribution every single day for 15 months. And so our priorities shifted away from our primary responsibility, and now we're sort of circling back to the landlord/maintenance end of things.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Just a few more questions that I want to delve a little bit deeper into. I think we're good. You can go have back a seat. I'm going to put some other people on the spot here. I'd love to hear, so back in the day, I used to do workshops at Project Hope and other shelters for women who were transitioning out of shelter into homes. And one of the things that I learned in my journey there was about how difficult it was. Once you get an apartment, the hardest thing for you to do is to keep it, because sometimes you get involved in abusive relationships or in relationships with people who are going to compromise your lease. And so I'm curious about the type of preventative measures or the types of workshops or education that once you are in, what role does BHA play, if any, in educating the residents about how important it is to maintain that lease?
Yeah, so this is a place where BHA really looks to partners. And I was mentioning before that it's like, when we have people who come in with a support like Project Hope, it makes a world of difference. It means that we really experience the lack of that when it's not there, because the BHA doesn't have like a service provider staff. That was, we talked about the money they cut in the early 2000s. In the 1990s, they cut the money for like resident service folks, so the BHA therefore doesn't have many on site ourselves. It is one of the things that our inspectors and our managers are trained to be aware of, right, is like various cues around domestic violence and other situations. And sometimes we do some of the reports that we'll get sometimes about activity in a unit, we'll go in and realize that the activity is being done by someone else who is taking advantage of the leaseholder, right?
That's right.
And I said at the beginning, our interest is in preserving tenancies. So if somebody is inviting those folks in and saying, hey, let's do illegal activity in my unit, like that's a problem for us and we're gonna pursue court action. But if somebody's being taken advantage of, we'll work with them, we'll try to get services in, change the locks and have them be the only one with the key, and really work with them on how do we avoid somebody else getting access to this. And because the thing that we hate is a situation where, someone's being taken advantage of and then like you're saying they're a victim, but then they're also the one who's in trouble, right?
Yeah. So the reason why I bring that up is because we're talking about safety, right? And there are people who are in situations that can't advocate for themselves, right? For whatever reason that is, right? And I'm not here to, pass judgment, but I just really want to uplift the fact that there are people right now in situations where they're not safe and they are being taken advantage of and also putting the housing at risk. And so those are the bad characters that we often see. And I think that preventative measures are really important as part of this conversation, because if we're really serious about addressing the public safety concern, then we're going to have to look at the full picture, look at the full family, look at everything that's happening in that unit, and that includes the 13-year-old who is not enrolled in school and is running around these streets causing havoc because they don't have the right proper support systems, right? And I know this because this is the type of situations that I always find myself in with my constituents, is then working with the family to enroll them in BPS. So all these wraparound services, I would really recommend, and you know this because you were the chair of Ways and Means, and now you're in a position of being able to define what type of supports BHA residents need. I would recommend that you consider putting in some dollars into that budget around resident services so that we can have people on site that can work alongside our public safety officers to connect people to the support services that they need as part of the prevention strategy. And I'm just going to name that as something that I think is worth considering, because for me, I've only been in this position for 3.5 years, and I'm going to tell you that the last year, I have learned so much about politics and how we really push ourselves and our ideological differences to really find common ground. Because at the end of the day, 13 city councilors, what we want is the best for all of the constituents that we serve, and we're not going to get there by being so divisive, right? So if I can utilize my platform in a way that's going to push us in a direction that's going to get us to where they want to be, then I am willing to roll up my sleeves and do that work. But what I won't be doing is being engaged in petty politics, because right now the political climate in the city of Boston resembles the political climate nationally. And I think when it comes to public safety, there is a divide in terms of what is going to be the best way for us to deal with violence. And the best way for us to deal with violence is to recognize that neither side have it right. And what we need to do is put our differences aside and figure out what's it going to take to both address the concerns of our residents and also put our political differences to the side, because there's just the environment is extremely hostile, and the only people who are losing are those who we're really here to represent. So with that, which is a lot, I'd love to hear from each of you in terms of this political climate. What recommendations do you have that both honors the political tension that exists around public safety? And how are we going to put our differences aside and put the people first, understanding that everyone's going to lose and not everyone's going to get what they want? Within that context, how do we meet this moment in a way that honors the people that we serve?
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. I very much agree with the point, and I actually think the two budget items that I thanked the council for today really reflect this balance. So when we talk about the budget that got passed in June, it had $500,000 that's supporting the expansion of SHU's force, right? Those 6 folks who are in the academy right now, so that we can really have a point person for every district, right? And again, we think of BHA police as like a little bit different from BPD, in part because of just the relationship that they're able to form with our residents. But that's kind of, one side of the public safety coin. On the other hand, you have $700,000 for this landmark youth program that we're aiming to set up at Franklin Field with a social worker, with all of these supports to really, we're trying to give our youth and to be clear, we're also copycatting a bit. Both Cambridge Housing Authority and Brookline Housing Authority have some youth programs that have just been totally transformative, really great for getting folks engaged with school, feeling really kind of enthusiastic about what they're doing. And listen, we're happy to take great notes from other people, so we're kind of copying some of that stuff and adding this wraparound piece as well. And I think that's an example of exactly what you're saying, where we're doing both and you're always going to see the BHA advocating for that, because we know our residents and we know that they need the whole world. And one thing I would just say on the budget front is and I'll be prickly with city departments about this, BHA folks, because we're housing people out of homelessness, people have a lot of needs. We're also the ones providing stable housing in the city of Boston. And I mentioned earlier that, we're basically housing all the families in Brighton today, right? So this is our neighborhoods. And sometimes people act like if folks live in BHA, then BHA is supposed to take care of all of their needs, right? BHA is supposed to be the ones who invest in their outdoor space, invest in their youth programs, invest in their safety, right? And it's no, the BHA is the platform for people's housing, but all of the services and programs and opportunities that exist in this incredibly wealthy city of Boston should be coming in. So yes, I want budget, but it's not I want to take money from the guy who's fixing the unit problems in order to start the youth program. What I want is for there to be more resources, recognizing that our kids are the city's kids, and we need that.
Thank you. And I know I'm going to, even though the chair has been gracious, I want to be mindful of the time, but I would love to hear from both of you. How do we meet this moment, understanding that there is so much tension here in the city of Boston when it comes to how we're going to address the issues of public safety? And how would you do it in a way that recognizes the difference of opinions that exist, and how do we get to the middle?
I think for me, it's about collaboration and communication, and if the real goal is to address public safety, there's no way to do that if we aren't coming together and having conversations. So I think that that's key. I think that the health and well-being of the residents of the city of Boston is what we're all striving for, and it's from a holistic standpoint. So we can talk about it from a public safety standpoint and crime and order, but I think that is so much more. And so how do we begin to sit down and have productive conversations where we're listening to one another, and then coming to some balance, because there are going to be times when we don't agree on, the pathways to get there. But how do we get to a place where we're not stalled in terms of our progress, so that we can keep moving forward and keep, our eyes on the prize? So I think that collaboration and the communication is to me, essential. And I think that sometimes we get away from that. And so that would be the biggest thing for me.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councilor, for the way you framed the question, and thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts. And I agree with both the administrator and the superintendent in terms of collaboration and partnership. And it wasn't by happenstance that I mentioned in my comments around whole of community. I am a firm believer that crime, deviance, and dysfunction is a social issue. And in many instances, what I've known and what I've come to appreciate in this moment is that based on the challenges that we have with law enforcement in particular communities as we work very hard to rebuild those relationships, that in many instances we're not the appropriate party to lead the conversation, but need to be an active stakeholder. So framing it up through that lens of whole of community, I firmly recognize the contributions that we all have in coming to the table in meeting in the middle. And I agree with my colleague and the superintendent around collaboration and partnership. And I want to just close by mentioning three things. One, alternative approaches. At the end, if someone has to be arrested and that's the only and the most appropriate response in the moment, then that's what it is. But we also are approaching from a very different angle and recognizing through that social lens that alternative approaches can be just as effective when we talk about those systemic contributors or feeders of crime. That's one. Two, we all have differences, and we're always going to have differences. Finding an appropriate way to ensure that we recognize those differences while we're all working and striving towards a common goal. And then lastly, for me, Shemaine Shu as an individual, I start out every day with my moral compass centered. It's the only way that I know how to start it because I want to lay my head just as comfortable. I do that, and that allows me to recognize the contributions of every individual that is willing to come to the table and try and come up with viable solutions, which is why when the administrator talked about, and Councilor Baker and Flynn mentioned and talked about our senior safety division or our security officers, that was a priority because they're no less significant in the conversation than the police officer or the other stakeholders in making sure that we can do our best economically and otherwise to make them whole and invest in them are extremely critical based on that initial framing that everyone matters in the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you for all of that. I took notes, and I'll just end with, my daughter, one of my daughter's best friends actually lives and was traumatized by what happened in Franklin Field. And one of the parents that was a part of an organization that I started also lives there with her daughter. And one of the things that I have reflected on, and I just want to thank the Boston Public Health Commission for their trauma response because I have been keeping track of the response and the work that the Boston Public Health Commission has been doing to support those families. So I just want to acknowledge their work and thank them for responding in the way that they have. I think that that is also part of the work. And I think as I continue to navigate, I have a 13-year-old, and every day I hope and pray that she'll come back home. right? And so the fear that we're all living in is real for all of us. And I think I want to acknowledge that, and it is a part of the conversation. But what I don't want to lose sight of is I don't want people to live in a state of fear. And the best way for us to really take care of our people is to let them know that we see them, that we affirm them, that we understand what is at stake, and that we're doing everything in our power to get them what they need so they won't cause harm to others. Right? And I think that is the conversation that I want to continue to guide us as we continue through this process. And, you know, I think I have a responsibility in leading in a way that gets us there. And I think that, you know, as difficult as it is to be always the elephant in the room, because I'm always going to say what people are thinking, and that's my job, and I'm okay with that. I think it's also important for me to be the official translator for people who don't know what is happening here and have great difficulty understanding how things happen or don't happen for them. And so there's a level of accountability that I'm going to take on my part, whether I'm in here or not, to make sure that I continue to fight for those who I have dedicated my entire life to. And I look forward to working alongside you all and doing just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor. Chair recognizes City Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Bach, how are you?
Doing well.
All right. I think I saw you in South Boston a couple days ago.
Seems likely. I was out there actually the morning that we were anticipating maybe that hurricane coming through.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I saw you. You walked too fast. Couldn't catch up. Nice to see all of you here. Thank you for being here. And thank you first. I'll start with the spirit of unification and appreciation. Thank you all for your amazing work with BHA. And I'm looking forward to hearing you share some of your plans. I think that questions were thrown at you or thoughts were thrown at you, but I'm quite sure, knowing our Councilor Bach here, you probably have some plans. I did hear a little bit, and I'll just ask everything all at once, and hopefully you've taken notes. In terms of the Compass program or FSS program, a lot of my concerns there is that the wait list is just way too long, and then previous to you joining BHA, there was a lot of concerns about just process, who do I call, and applications being lost, or where people are in that process. And then in terms of, I mean, BHA has had this issue historically, but looking to hear you share about how your plans to increase diversity in upper management. I think if we're talking holistic, addressing anything, safety, quality on all levels, then obviously it must be inclusive of those that we represent. And then if you do have, obviously I know you have like some really good juicy plans. And then if there's an existing dashboard, what are the metrics that you are thinking about implementing? How will you do that, and how will you synthesize it so that it's user-friendly for your residents, our residents? And then housing quality is a big deal for me. I think that viscerally, we talk about street cleaning, city services. Viscerally, we internalize a lot of the traumatic effects of our environment. And as Councilor Mejia pointed out, and I think Councilor Lara as well, we are our environment. And so when I do, obviously, I also share a lot of the public housing in District 7. And as I canvass, the conditions some of the conditions, not all, are horrific. And you can just see that painting, hasn't taken place in years. The flooring is coming apart. Kitchen cabinets are too old. And so you start seeing, damage from mold or mildew. And I saw a lot of it, especially during, in the last few weeks, I would say. And so canvassing and visiting homes. And so for housing quality, I do think it's completely connected to the superintendent's point, completely connected to our holistic health if we're talking about housing ecosystems, not just building home boxes in concrete jungles that we expect people to, children to fly out and be sweet little birds. If you give them a jungle, then that's what you're going to get. And so we are responsible to an extent, and I agree with you, Councilor Bach, that it's not wholly on the city's responsibility for the fiscal responsibility to address these issues. And so your plans for any private philanthropic resources or how else we could bring more resources to address that. In terms of increasing officers, I am of the position that if we increase officers and pay them better, then we can do away with some of the overtime and improve quality of life. And so that's not on you, but obviously the officers here. And I feel like the budget is there, and where are we with cadet programs if that's the direction that we're going to go into. And so it would free up, I know this can be a contentious part, but it would free up some flag jobs for, and again, I have no plan and I have no position on this yet because I believe in being practical and looking at a comprehensive plan for hiring civilians for flag jobs. But I think, if we pay our officers better and increase the numbers, then we're increasing quality of life because people are not inundated with working overtime. Prior to your onboarding, Administrator Bach, I had met with Kate Bennett and Joel and others who talked to, and we discussed mental health, and I connected the department with a mental health clinic, and I was, Ms. Bennett had expressed, the interest in improving mental health or destigmatizing mental health or giving access to its residents. And so I'd be interested in working with you to further that as well. But I'd be interested, I'm extremely interested in housing overall and housing ecosystems or housing amenities or other types of improvements that we can work on together. So I look forward to doing that, and your questions in advance are much appreciated.
Great, thank you so much, Councillor. And I will try to hit most of the things. Just on the last one, we would love to partner on any mental health resource. It is obviously a huge need citywide, and we're no different from the rest of the city. And we see so much need for that, and our managers can't be all things to all people. But we aspire to the BHA being able to connect people to whatever it is that they need because we see it firsthand. On the grand plans front, I haven't, obviously I'm a month in and I haven't come out with a kind of next 5 years of the BHA document yet. I imagine that is in the future.
You haven't been ripping and running and busy.
But I think one thing that I can be clear about, that I think I've been pretty clear about in the press, is that the BHA is currently entitled to have more federal public housing units than it currently does. And since, one good sign of something being in demand is when you have a 37,000 person wait list for it, right? So for us, we would love, we mentioned at the start of this that we've got 10,000 today. We could actually add 2,900 more. That number used to be 2,500 and some things changed recently so that it's now 2,900. That would be increasing our stock by almost a third. And that would mean a lot. And the reality is doing that would be expensive because we would have to help cover the cost of building those units between the city and the state and the feds. But then the federal government would give us ongoing subsidy for them. So in that sense for the city, they're probably the cheapest way to get deeply affordable units that exist. So that's something we really want to do. And then using the green revolution and the green retrofits to really improve unit conditions. I think sometimes people hear green retrofitting and they're well, I don't know how much of it, how important is that compared to all these capital needs of the BHA? It's no. The two things are completely intertwined. We've always had an impossible time getting political support for things like replacing the roof so that there isn't mold and changing up the ventilation so that people breathe, right? These are things that have not been regarded as sexy. And the great thing now is that there's a bunch of federal money available for greenhouse gas retrofits that do all these things. So we are like chasing that money because we want to make our units better for all of our residents. And we, in terms of like dashboards and stuff, the unit conditions as they exist today, we are trying to make rapidly better, and we are trying to just be more responsive. So I talked a little bit in my remarks about Zendesk, this like new system that we're implementing, but part of our goal is that as a counselor, you'd be able to, if you saw something, right, like file it with us and track it through our system and find out from us how long is it going to take for this issue to be resolved and know that it's been resolved. And the reality today is that we do that much more through like just communication. You're calling the office, there's an email, but it is, the BHA has not had a sort of like 311 type system, and Zendesk is really us trying to put that on top of our existing systems so that like external parties and also crucially, most crucially, the residents themselves can have clear expectations about what we're doing and how quickly we're going to solve the issue. Because we don't, there was a time when like everything was on paper and things could get lost, but we shouldn't live in that time anymore. And I know that you're sympathetic with kind of putting, we're trying to move to a digital system where everybody if they go in and look at a unit and they see the condition, they're taking a picture of it, it's instantly going up into the database. The folks who are coming out can see the picture so they can see what the actual issue is, so you don't have the issue of I showed up on site with the wrong tools because it was described the wrong way, right? Like, so we're really trying to bring the BHA's like kind of operational back end into the 21st century because our folks work so hard. I mean, that's what's so hard for me is like, it's just these two facts that we still have unit conditions that we really like want to get more on top of, and our residents deserve that. And the people who work at the BHA are like going out every day and just doing like a ton of work. So we have to figure out how we work smarter, right? And bring in more resources. But we are, to the dashboard point, the idea of the Zendesk stuff is that it would give us a much more sort of like public facing, accessible way for you to track an issue through. I think that on the diversity of upper management, in a second I'm going to have my chief of staff, Taylor Kane, come up and speak to this a little bit. But we actually, this is an ongoing conversation we've been having at BHA, because the interesting thing about BHA is we're a very diverse workforce. We're probably like on a sort of like long-term basis, like one of the most diverse city workforces for the longest. But you definitely do see gradations with that workforce becoming less diverse the further up you go in management. And so prior to me coming in, under Kate, Taylor's been leading a series of conversations internally with our staff, in particular with kind of like our middle management staff, our kind of up and comers, like the people who are at the BHA, they're doing great work. And we want them to feel like there's a pathway to advancement, and they of course want that pathway to advancement. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is like, how do we just like make that happen more, make the culture more conducive to that. And it's interesting, a lot of the answers on that are things like making it really clear what's going to get you promoted, right? And having really good feedback loops and various things so that people don't feel like it's who you know or like whether people like you or not, like just having really, basically in many ways, like promoting diverse management is about good management. But I did want Taylor to just speak a little bit to some of that work.
I'll hope this works. So yes, some of the work that we've been doing at BHA under this umbrella of what we're calling our Racial Equity and Social Justice Initiative is really looking inward first and understanding how we, as a large public institution with a very diverse workforce, is really intentional about how we're centering equity, really looking at our workforce, because that is really what came up in staff conversations. So as Kenzie mentioned, really the focus on transparency and accountability has been a really big point of focus in those conversations, and really creating pathways to upward mobility for our staff. And that starts with understanding, yes, what is it that I need to be able to do or know? What are the skills that I need to develop to be able to move up? And how can we create training opportunities for folks to develop those skills while they're doing those current jobs so that they know how to get the job that they want in 5 years from now and 10 years from now? Because it's really in our best interest as an agency to keep staff that have a very strong mission alignment to what we do, which is being an incredible provider of affordable housing for some of our lowest income residents in the city of Boston, and creating pathways for those residents to have opportunities at the BHA as well is kind of part and parcel of that work.
Yeah, and that second piece, so we've got something on the federal side called Section 3, which is a responsibility for us to try to create work opportunities for our residents, for BHA residents. And I think that's something that over time it's ebbed and flowed in terms of success, but too often it's been sort of like, let's have entry-level jobs for residents, but this question of like, how do you actually get people to move up the chain? I mean, a famous example of this that was successful at the BHA was that maybe 40 years ago now, Harry Spence was the head of the BHA, and he started a management institute that was explicitly for folks who, internal to the BHA, that was explicitly for residents who were working, and they were trying to prepare them to be in management roles. And one of the first members of that was Billy McGonigal, who became the administrator 30 years later. And at the time he was sweeping floors and doing very sort of basic laborer work. So I think about that as a model of the type of thing that I want to create in this role is opportunities for more folks who live in our developments and who just know and care about them from just in their bones to become the people who lead the agency. And just the one other thing, I know I had one more thing on your list. Private philanthropy. So that, obviously when I was here in a different capacity, I was representing the wealthiest district in the city. And a thing that I feel very keenly is that, that's the District 8's got the sports teams, it's got the universities, it's got the hospitals, and a bunch of the big businesses. And often those folks are looking to do things for community, but sometimes they're looking literally at who's down the street from my entity. And that's nice, but often just across the park, not very far away, are BHA developments, and those aren't necessarily the first people who those community relationships are being forged with. So I'm super interested in this point of, and obviously the district I used to have and your district share that kind of Mission Hill seam, right, where you go from the institutions to a lot more of our neighborhoods and our BHA developments. This question of how do we really unlock the wealth of Boston to support BHA residents, that's got to be part of how we make everybody jealous of the BHA kids, right? That they get access to those resources.
I look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you. I think I was saying something about you. It would seem that you had, assuming smooth spending, BPD has $31 million in excess. That is not the line item for collective bargaining. That is separate from overtime for those watching. That is separate from contractual. And so it would seem that there is funds to increase or to bring in another cadet program. What are the plans? Where are we with that? And how do you increase? Just for me to respond to my constituents who are constantly asking about the question.
Are you talking about an increase in actual police officers?
Yes.
So recruit officers? So we are looking to have another class, and I think the tentative timeframe is March. And so I will not, although we may disagree on things, I will not disagree with you on the fact that there is a need for an increase in officers. And additionally, you said better pay. So those are two things that I think that, I definitely would advocate for. And we are working towards that because we are losing people on a daily basis. And so when we end up graduating a class, sometimes we're still at a deficit because we lose so many people to retirements or moving on to other positions outside of the department. So I think that as we look at that, the funding is currently there, and I think to what Councilor Flynn asked about how you can how the council can support the department is just to continue having funding for future classes.
And so I don't know if you can answer to this, but first, Superintendent, thank you for answering. I'd like to know what do we disagree on?
I didn't mean that. That was a follow-up to. That was a follow-up to when I said there'll be times that we'll disagree. but we have to work collaboratively, and so I was just using that as a follow-up to that. So no, we don't have any disagreements.
So the police department has millions in excess, about 30 million to be exact. And I guess I'm wondering, people in the community are saying, some police officers or some people, not yourself, are saying that we don't have enough money to increase officers. And I'm like, that's not how it works, right? There's a whole class that has to come in and all that programming stuff. And so just wanted to be clear that it's not an issue right now that the council, or that you don't have enough money in the budget. It's more of programmatically you have to increase. And then the other thing too is the police department looking into bringing back any type of mandates to increase diversity in your cadet programs?
Mandates?
That would require a certain amount of black officers, brown officers, people of other diverse.
I can't speak specifically to that, but what I will tell you is that the efforts around recruitment do focus specifically on diversity and bringing in black, brown, and anyone to make the force more diverse.
Thank you. There was some sort of, well, maybe Councilor Chair, Mr. Chair, you can answer to this. There was some sort of, it was a 2010 back then where you had to hire a certain amount of black officers. What was that?
The consent decree.
The consent decree, and then, so that's not in effect anymore.
We no longer have a consent decree.
Okay, well, sorry. If you wanted to add to any of my questions.
Sure, I would just briefly add that, we too are very committed to diversity of all persons that are interested in joining us. We believe that there's room for all to make contributions, but very specifically, we're very fortunate with this group of 6 officers that we're bringing on. We have females, we have Latinx, we have Cape Verdean, we have Asian, we have white. So we're very, very blessed in that we have a diverse group. The challenges that we're having in recruitment across the discipline is an extreme challenge in that everyone is dealing with. So we're doing things like, personal efforts. I'm meeting potential candidates on Saturday mornings at 7:30 in the morning. I'm dropping off personal packets myself to individuals. We're having informational and in sessions that allow us to speak to where we're going as a department, where we're at as a city, around transparency, so that officers have a clear understanding of what they're coming into and the work and around the work, and B, the commitment that we as an agency are making to them in support of them doing the work. Lastly, just want to make mention that as we think about the officers that we have here, we're very fortunate where 4 of the 13 officers that we have were former employees of BHA Police, and BHA is an agency that came either out of retirement or chose to come back to the organization because they believe in the work and believe in the community that we're serving. So we're very blessed and we're very fortunate in that space to have them.
Thank you. It would seem whenever I bring up the diversity issue, I think, one, it's a sensitive topic in how, we make space for everyone and fairly hire. But two, that we should make sense out of that, right? It connects directly to the impact, and the intentions could be increase officers, but the impact of that, if we are not hiring people that represent the demographics in the areas where they serve, then obviously there's sometimes an adverse impact with lack of cultural competency, even through trainings or other types of classes that people have to go through. And so for BHA, I guess I'd be interested in looking deeper into any type of your reimbursement packages of tuition or building those pathways or upper mobility. What does that look like exactly beyond, DEI, beyond those conversations and meetings? What packages or benefits or incentives are you putting in place to increasing it? And then obviously, as I mentioned, Council Bach, would love to look at D7. I want good for all of Boston, but my priority is D7. I would love to look at D7 and the inventory there, get up to some updates, just talk to you about the projects that you're looking at on D7. I do agree that, of course, we should build this holistic ecosystem in all housing and make everyone jealous, and well, hopefully everyone is having equal, equitable services and we're not making anyone jealous of services. But I do agree with you that the onus shouldn't be solely on the city or to create this type of, holistic living. But we could put more efforts into our amenities, and I think those obviously decompress stress, other types of quality of life that address mental health, and of course systemically doing away with racist practices, historical racist practices that obviously are perpetuating this type of just unhappiness or lack of spaces for youth to go to, or I mean, if, like you said, if kids are outside, they deserve to be outside, and where do we put, children? And so the issue, I think, at the crux of, violence or, safety, obviously is systemic racism. And so how are we, on a policy level, looking to implement policies or practices that are going to address it at the very root, as opposed to just looking at, okay, BHA, what are you doing? Or officers, what are you doing? Well, that's after the fact. And I agree with Councilor Julia Mejia that more preventative practices obviously makes more sense.
Yeah, definitely. And we do think that when folks invest in BHA, that there is a kind of like core anti-racism there, because it's been the historic of systemic racism that has caused the disinvestment from public housing, right? This perception that, oh, that's housing for disproportionately Black and brown people, and so we don't need to put money into it, unfortunately drove a lot of the situation that we're in now. In the same way that the difficulties for our voucher holders sometimes in finding apartments has to do with discrimination that is across a host of protected classes, but often particularly race. So we do think that kind of like putting our folks first and foremost is a racial equity like move that the city and the state can make by making those investments, and we're definitely not shy about advocating on that front. I just wanted to say on the scholarships point, we are actually right now talking about how the BHA can better support continuing education. On the getting people in the door front, what we have as kind of a neat tool is the fact that residents in federal public housing and vouchers, when their income goes up, their rent also goes up, right? And FSS lets you exclude that, but there's another exclusion for full-time students. And one of the things that we're working on is there a way that we can kind of create work opportunities for BHA residents who are full-time students / create work opportunities that are also studentships of some kind, such that we can like create pathways in that are not going to have that immediate like rent increase impact for people and their families. That's though much more about in the door, the continuing education piece, and like giving folks an opportunity to level up their credentials to access management. That's a piece that we're talking a lot about. And one of the things that we're also trying to do at the BHA is figure out how to just better communicate the packages of benefits that we have, because we do have, like the city, we participate in the pension system, we have a lot of things. One of the things we've been talking about is that if you work at BHA for 10 years, which is also the time to invest in the pension, it also makes you eligible for a lot of these loan forgiveness systems. And so one of the things we're thinking about is, can we pitch to people like, hey, come and spend a decade here, and you're also at the end of that going to get these student loans for your graduate work reimbursed, right? And so that way the loan's forgiven, right? And so could that be a kind of package that we sell to people? Because I think the funny thing is that possibility exists today, but not very many of our employees or potential employees are sort of thinking about it or realizing that it is a pathway for them. So that's just one example.
Or hey, even if you have housing, public housing, then let's build equity on on your work, somehow savings or FSS, you still can apply to something like that, separate from the Section 8, and build equity and pull yourself out of lower socioeconomic class and into middle possibly,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. My colleague, Councilor Worrell from District 4, was unable to make it. He sent a communication to the committee regretting his unavailability, and also commending the work of the co-sponsors as well as the BHA and the police department. Two questions that he is asking that I asked, one of which was, I believe, answered in your opening, Administrator, which is what are the policies and procedures followed when unsafe conditions are reported that impact children and seniors. And then the other question is, what is the average time that it takes BHA to complete the repairs and the remediation from work orders once they're alerted of the issue? So more like a dashboard, sort of a 311 scenario where you call in, you get a control number, and then within a short period of time it's... So is there that type of mechanism when someone brings a complaint that there's a reasonable expectation that their issue will be addressed in a time frame?
So that's what we're trying to set up with the Zendesk system. Right now, internally, we can track how long work orders have existed, but what we are not doing right now is giving people a clear expectation of this is how long this type of thing takes. And basically what we want to get to is a place where we're solving basically all work orders in 30 days, and it's only an exceptional instance where we're waiting on something for it to take 60 days, right? That's kind of the standard. And so while we've been doing these work order reduction efforts that Josh and his team has been leading, one of the things they've been doing, because it's like, you know, how do you eat the elephant when we've got a big delay? And one of the ways that they've been doing that is actually that they've taken two teams, and they've had one team that starts at the lowest number unit and just goes in order and just takes care of like everything in that unit, so that if it's got 5 different issues, like they're all being taken care of at once. But then another team is starting with the work orders that have been waiting the longest and working down, because our goal is to basically get rid of all the ones that are kind of like, you know, have been hanging out there for way too long. And instead of having them sort of hang there in this no man's land of like, well, it didn't happen in the first 180 days, so is it ever going to happen, right? The idea is no, tackle all the ones that have been sitting out there and get us back to a place where we really try to not have work orders age past the 60-day mark, and we're aiming for the 31. And obviously, I should say, the same way that with a wait list it's hard to give an average, it's hard to give an average for this. I mean, you call BHA in the middle of the night because you're locked out, or because, you know, your toilet's overflowing, like you're going to get response right then. So there are emergency things that, you know, so it just varies by type of issue.
Very good. Thank you. And the lead sponsor has been very gracious, ceding her time to my colleague. So Chair recognizes Councilor Erin Murphy.
Thank you. And thank you for...
1 second, Councilor Murphy.
And we have a hard stop at 2:30. So after this, we do have public testimony, and I know that everyone has time commitments.
2 o'clock.
I know that, but we're going to extend it to 2:30. Thank you. Go ahead,
Okay.
Madam.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your answering all these questions and sharing all this information. I'm hopeful, but I do want to make sure we don't leave here like naive, that everything is great. And as an at-large counselor and all of the counselors who attended, you know, we do get calls, there are concerns, so I just hope going forward we can continue this cordial conversation, just get working together and making sure that we're, you know, offering the best housing for our residents. Also, you touched upon, I know we were together at the Mary Ellen McCormick when we were dedicating the Billy McGonigal Community Center, and that's like a model, right, that we're making sure, and you talked about, and I appreciated your comment about how much is expected from BHA. I mean, my 20 plus years in BPS, most times teachers are expected, police officers are always expected to do more than what their job description is. So making sure that the other agencies are stepping in, because it was duly noted by me when you said that there are many needs for our residents, but you and your agency cannot you know, help all of them. And wondering if you could touch on, and the District 9 Councilor talked about the youth services, and that is great, but how is your relationship with BPS? And if you could just comment on, you know, how do you think that could be stronger going forward? Because many of the children in the housing are in our BPS system, and how can we work together more closely and help each other there?
Yeah, so we actually have a data sharing MOU with BPS that's like at the 1 yard line, I think, right now, because there had been one, it had lapsed, and obviously, and this is not, you know, it's not anybody being difficult. Both we and BPS are under very strict, like, federal rules, right, around how we share information. but that has been a kind of like a cause of some trip ups in terms of us being able to coordinate best. And just given the fact that, like, you know, the BHA kids, vast majority are going to BPS schools. So the way I think about it is those are the kids who, like, they go to sleep on city land and they get up in the morning and they go to city schools. And so they're the kids the city has all day, right? And then we hope they get to go to a BCYF or something in the evening. And so it's just like, you know, if there's any kids who we have just responsibility for, right, in this building, in my building, over at the bowling building, right, it's those folks. And so we've been working quite closely with BPS because we really want to be able to get to that kind of data sharing so that we can really, like, track our kids, know which schools they're all at, like, think about, I mean, even something like the tragedy at Franklin Field on Sunday, like, we're supporting the kids at our development, and BPS is supporting the same kids at the schools, right? And so, and we're communicating about that, but, like, there is this kind of, like, how do we make the parallel things, like, interconnected? I will say a huge growth for the BHA's relationship with BPS has been this BPS voucher program and the family-led stability pilot, because this thing where their homeless coordinators, like, you know, identify families that are housing insecure, maybe even living in shelter, and the kids are getting bussed in, and then they're flagging them for us, and there's a sort of funneled set of vouchers that we can then make available. I think that's been, like, really a transformatively successful partnership. And it's one of those things where, because there's so much need, everyone's always like, well, how do we get more folks into that? But I will just say that we've done, I think it's, David, is it 1,500? Yeah, it's a little more than 1,500 families, BPS families, have been housed through that partnership. And that's only been in the last few years. So it's like a huge thing that we're doing with them.
No, awesome. And as always, it's building those relationships. And you mentioned, just lastly, it's not just the students and the families, it's also the teachers. Like when that poor boy over at Castle Island, the teachers from the Lee School were calling, and how can they be supportive? Because they're then, you know, helping the rest of the kids. Or, you know, the Cash School where this girl is in the hospital, like making sure that when people do ask, totally understand and respect that confidentiality, but there are people in positions that are working directly with our students and our families, so how can we give them at least supports and information to ease the other people that they're around? So thank you.
Thank you very much. No one wishing to provide public testimony remotely, so we're going to close that portion, but I do see we do have someone here willing to offer public testimony. It's Clifton Braitworth, no stranger, so introduce yourself, Clifton. Just for the record, you have the floor to address.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Council. My name is Clifton A. Braithwaite, longtime advocate in the community, and I'm just here to address some of the things from Charlestown and South Boston that was told to me. I only have 5 points. I'm just going to give out my 5 points, and I know y'all are smart enough to jump right on in and do the meat and potatoes for the constituents. When it comes to safety, one thing I realized through all the developments, there's no bells for people to ring. So that's why a lot of times the doors are open where we can't stop and make it safety reasons for the families. 2, is there a safety mechanism for a mother, father, grandparent if their child is living that alternative lifestyle as far as crime? Is there a way to protect them that the parents, that the family doesn't think that it's the grandparent turning their kid in? Because if their kid's arrested for drug dealing, I believe they lose their lease and their Section 8, and then they have to move. Where would they go? When it comes to the rodent problem, it's a two-part thing. It's the development, and it's also the tenants that have bad behaviors on the way that they throw out trash. And also, it's the contracting companies that are coming to pick up the trash, how they just leave everything on the ground. I have video of that. I can show you all that stuff later. When it comes to the rodent problem, South Boston has a very bad problem. And I spoke to Michael from Sanitation in Quincy. They have a real good way of dispersing the rodents without using chemicals, because you know on the back end, when we put chemicals in the rats, owls, hawks, etc., get poisoned, and it weakens up our community. Charlestown, their biggest complaint in the developments is that they don't have washers and dryers. So I wanted to know in the new development, is there washers and dryers in all the buildings? That was one of their main concerns. Youth programs. When I used to be a record label executive, we used to go to all the developments, and a lot of that stopped. We're not using our arts and culture family to penetrate in the community. Now, we did this, UMMF, Cindy Diggs and myself and a few others who were in the art form, we did this on our own with no budget. But there's a lot of programs out there that can effectively help in those developments, and most of them need homes. So I would think that would be a great trade-off, possibly, where any building space that you have, that they could be inside there, because a lot of them do the work, but they just don't have the resources or home to bring the kids. And I think it would be best served in developments. We've come a long way in Boston, and I think we can go a lot further. I just wanted to touch those things because I know everybody's been here a long time. But I think what I hit off is very accurate to make change. And if we want to dive down deeper into the solutions, feel free to contact me at any time. But those are just some of the top peeves that I heard while walking through the community for decades. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Clifton. Thank you for your participation and your community engagement all the years. So best of luck to you.
Thank you.
And obviously, thank you to co-lead sponsor and my colleagues that were here. As you saw, Administrator and Chiefs widely attended. It's an important issue. There's been a great partnership with district and at-large colleagues with PHA. Again, those that are fond from their early years. And also the commitment and the partnership that we enjoy with the police department that we want to continue to do. Give you folks the resources that you need to do your job and perform it at a high level and to continue to make our city and our neighborhoods and our development safe, and it's a collective effort. So with that, this matter will be remaining committee, and with respect to, and I appreciate everyone's time and attention. You had some very talented and committed, dedicated BHA employees here that do tremendous work, and they're the unsung heroes, frankly, of the BHA. But with respect to this, we'll keep this in committee in case we need to have further discussions. But with respect to docket 1141, in order for a hearing to discuss public safety and quality of life issues for our residents in public housing, the Committee on Public Safety in conjunction with the Committee on Housing will be adjourned. Thank you all.